Good evening. I'd like to take a motion to convene our school board meeting in virtual fashion in each of our homes. It's the meeting of January 5th, 2022. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Ben. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Ian. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation.
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, welcome everybody, and Happy New Year. Happy, and it seems like a weird word to use this week, but we'll go with it. I hope that everybody enjoyed a joyous and healthy holiday break and that you got some much needed time to recharge. A new year usually signals the chance to turn the page. It gives us the opportunity to start anew, and it incentivizes many of us to set new goals. Some reflected that New Year's resolutions are our mere attempt to demonstrate some control over our lives, because so often the future can feel so uncertain and unpredictable. With information for what is COVID safe constantly in flux, and the finish line to our fight against this pandemic continually moving, I would say that unpredictable and uncertain are perfect words to describe the times we're living in. And this new, more contagious strain of COVID certainly makes it more difficult to turn the page on a new year. One of the greatest challenges of the past 2 years has been the extent to which people have been asked or expected to be flexible, patient, and understanding. At a time when many of us are fatigued by the pandemic's impact on our lives, we are being asked yet again to be flexible, patient, and understanding. And the impact on most of us has been great. I want to especially acknowledge our teachers, administrators, and staff who have carried a very heavy load, who continually pivot whenever needed, and who, despite the challenges they face at home and at work, arrive each day with a smile on their faces and a deep commitment to our students. I know that the answers aren't easy and the ask is sometimes impossible. New Year's do give many hope, and the good news is that there's a lot of hope on the horizon. With vaccines now available to all of our students and staff, and the eligibility expanding for boosters, we know that we have tools to protect our school community and to minimize quarantines and disruptions to learning. Before this variant reared its head, the governor was considering vaccine thresholds schools could meet so they could be eligible to move away from mask use in school. While that time is certainly not yet here, I'd like to think that when the governor feels the time is right, that we would have enough students and staff to meet this kind of threshold and make a decision that is right for our community. We also have a PCR testing program in place. While we're not in a position to mandate testing without parental consent, which is a topic many of you reached out to us about this week, we do encourage everyone to consider enrolling in our testing program. It's free, easy, and it's another tool we have to keep our students and staff healthy and our schools open. Tonight, we're also looking forward to hearing from Dr. Lauro about the progress he and our administrators have made on our Test to Stay program. This will create yet another path forward towards minimizing quarantines and keeping our schools open for in-person instruction. Although the Omicron variant was not on our radar screen this summer when we developed our district goals, we made the commitment to prioritize in-person learning whenever possible. It remains the ultimate goal. I'm praying this contagious variant leaves us as quickly as it arrived. While the decisions this year continue to feel complex and at times impossible, the district and board are committed to doing what's best for students. Shifting to our agenda. At tonight's board meeting, we're excited to hear from Chris Hodge, our Director of Physical Education, Health, and Athletics, who will present an overview of the district's athletic program. During the policy portion of our meeting, we will conduct first readings for the Dignity for All Students policy, a proposed new payroll policy, and our policy for complaints and grievances by students. Since everyone is virtual this evening, community members who wish to participate in public comment will need to email me at jddomenico@pelhamschools.org by 8 p.m. Please include your name and your Pelham mailing address, And to the extent possible, please keep comments brief as I will be reading them into the record. And last but not least, I wanted to extend my appreciation, immense appreciation to Dr. Lauro. This is likely our last board meeting together. I've enjoyed working with you. It's been a really great experience, and I'm truly grateful for your willingness to jump right in, feet first, into the work, and for your fresh energy. I've told you many times, you brought us fresh energy that was not this COVID fatigued, sense that we all are sort of carrying around, and just added such a great willingness to bring your expertise back to Pelham. So I thank you.
Well, thank you.
So this brings us to section 2, which is approval of the minutes. I'd like to take a consent of 2.1 and 2.2. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Leah. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Sue. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Section 3 is administrative and committee reports. 3.1 is Dr. Laura's superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank Jessica and the group for giving me the opportunity. It certainly has been an interesting one. You spoke about COVID fatigue, but I can assure you that I'm leaving with COVID fatigue. It's been a hectic time, but most of my comments tonight actually, unfortunately, revolve around that, because most of the time over the last few days since we've been back from the vacation period have been spent on the exact topic of the evening, I guess, most of it being COVID. So I too have some of the same comments to make. I think we're in a good place, and Jessica mentioned about tools, and those are the things that we now have in place, and we have some more to add tonight that puts us in a great position so that we can move forward and return things as much as possible to a strong educational program that we had in the past, that we continue to have despite what's been going on. And I think some of that evidence will come out in even some future reports that will be coming up to the board and to the public. But let me start out by the first thing, speaking to our emergency closing of some weeks ago now because of a bomb threat. And one of the things that I had to kind of pull together were a lot of things that were in place, but they were not all in the same place. And one of the things that was not in place that I thought we needed, which I worked on, and I want to give it to the board by Friday, is just a chart that explains who calls whom and notifies the public and so on. So we managed to get it all put together, but it didn't go as smoothly from my point of view as I liked it. So I worked on the development of a flow chart that allowed it to flow from the point of contact to me, making a decision, and then flowing all the way down to the community and all the people that need to be notified. You know, there were things that we missed on a notification of one police department over another police department, or the mayor and over another mayor. So again, in all the excitement, we managed to pull it all together, but I think it needed it. So I worked with the group on that, and we pulled a lot together. Alex and I are really pulling documents that exist, but putting them into a new document that I will get to the board by Friday. I was going to share it with you tonight, but there are things that still needed to be updated. So rather than hold it in my hand and say, here it is, I rather just clean it all up and get it to you in another format, which we will do electronically. So that's one good thing. And I think we learned a lot from that experience. So if it does happen again, we probably will handle it a little differently. I don't want to imply that it didn't go well. It did. We managed to notify everybody within an hour shortly after that 6:40 phone call. So I was satisfied with that. But what went on in between, if you were here in my home watching me like a madman, you'd know something needed to be done. So I took it upon myself to do that. The second item was the inclement weather of today. So we're talking about closings. And that was another interesting one. We had to make some decisions quickly. I want to explain to the public my reason for doing it asynchronously today, rather than just call it a snow day or an emergency closing day. And I know there are people that are concerned about that. It is not a crutch. We're not doing that all the time. We did it because I didn't want to break the continuity of just getting back and everybody getting organized. And it's not only the students, but all the staff. And when you break that continuity, it's hard to get it back again. And then looking ahead and realizing that there's a potential of a snowstorm on Friday. And I can tell you that just because of the calls I've gotten from our neighboring superintendents that want to be on a phone call tomorrow to discuss it, that some of us have a crystal ball about how much snow we're getting, because This time they reached out and said, we need to have this conversation before we do it in the morning. So I'm aware of that. I'm going to say this now. I don't, if we do call it, I probably will not make it a teaching day. It'll just probably be a snow day. And there are a couple of people that wrote to me and reminded me, and I said, I do remember those days as a child. And they were days that you look back at them, they were usually with favorable memories. The days of the snow and outside and sleigh riding and just playing and ignoring, all the worries of the world of what a child has, and certainly COVID, and certainly all of the learning online and those experiences. So I think we all need a breather. If it happens, that's my intent on Friday. And the other reason for it is that I'm just not satisfied with the way we have that plan working. And Steve and I have been working with the teachers union trying to get a better program for K through 12. And I know there's been discussion and a lot of comments about the K2 piece versus the 3-5 piece versus the 6-12 piece. And there are differences in the way that people are implementing it. And it's just it isn't quite where we need it to be. And so that has become evident to me. And rather than make it be another day, which will cause more angst and more confusion, we're just going to try to sit down, iron this out, get the plan really clearly developed and in place, and then move forward from there. So that is my intent about if something should happen on Friday. And I do believe the way this conditions are being reported right now is we probably will know earlier. This morning was one of those where at 5:30 when Jim called me, we both said, there's nothing going on and it looks good. I went back to bed and at 6:30 it pinged again and I looked out and it was icy. So it was the right call, the delay, and then it was the right call to just remove and to go remotely. Again, based on what I said earlier, we were chit-chatting about the accident just alone on the Hutchison River Parkway, which was right at our exit. And I believe it was something like 30 or 40 cars. And from the emails and pictures that I received from other people that were involved in it, and it kind of got passed around. I'm glad I didn't call school because we would have had a good number of people stuck in that mess. And it wasn't the only place. We did call the county. The county police indicated a number of hot spots that Jim knew about, which if you looked at it, the blockages were at Route 87 and on a Hutch. And there was something up on 684 too. So all of that is just basically, I would say 75, 80% of our staff using those routes coming in. So we would have had a problem of not being able to cover school and classes. So that was the reason for the call. On the third item is our COVID activities. And Jessica, you mentioned a lot of them, so I don't want to repeat them again. I just want to confirm our commitment to the use of those tools. And the first one was to improve upon our Monday testing program. And when we did send the last one out, it jumped about 400. All right, now we're up to 1,100 people. And that's really good, except that when the return came, I think we wound up with almost 600 of them returned, not 1,100. So what we need to do, and I'm going to call upon the public and the community, is A, get everybody involved and get everyone doing the testing program and get everyone to return them. Because that data would be very helpful to us on Tuesday morning when we evaluate where we're at, when those results begin to come in, whether we potentially have a problem. But more importantly, it gives Julia and her team the opportunity to identify, quarantine, and remove students from being in the building and possibly infecting other students or faculty members or staff members. So it is an extremely important tool and not to be looked at lightly. It's been in place. I'm just surprised we haven't used it as much as we should. And now with Omicron and the way it spread so quickly, I'm gonna plead with everyone to try to do those tests. And I know it's difficult to get your students to return them on time, but that's an important tool for us to use in order to determine whether we have a problem or not. And I'm gonna speak a little bit later when we talk about our test to stay program, and we'll talk about the data and the results of what this week showed, because then there's some other stuff, but it's better to say it later. And another item here on the new tests of the state, which were made available to us, were the test kits that you heard about from the federal government that were sent down to the states, and then from the states down to the school districts. And thank Jim for going out on Saturday last week over the holiday when we heard that they were available, because we received an email to say pick them up through BOCES. Jim volunteered and went over with his, I guess, large van to pick all the boxes up. And we have them all, currently on the school premises. And I know people had varying opinions about what to use those kits for. And remember, we only got 2,800 of them, equal to our student population. So testing with it is just redundant with the testing program that we have free from the county. And once we use them, then they're gone. And then what do we have? The same problem again a day or two later, because how do we test? We don't have the kits. The best use of those kits, and we kind of went over it with a meeting that we had with the administrative group the other day for half a day. We kind of figured out that if we ran 20, 30 kids through that program daily, those kids could last 100 days. And that 100 days would take us to the end of the school year. So to me, that's an appropriate use of them. The expiration date is, I believe, late June, July. So we don't have a problem with that. We can get through the school year. We will watch the expiration dates in case there's some boxes in there that, come up with a different date. So we'll make sure we use the ones that expire first and move to the ones that I know are in there that expire later. So that was that testing program. Perhaps it's a good time to mention it and ask Julia to kind of pop in here and walk us through a little bit of it. Julia's been instrumental in not only monitoring all of that and working with her staff and pulling it together, but when we all sat the other day and kind of outlined everything, she took the notes and she pulled it all together. So I want to give her credit for putting it in writing, which I think you have a copy of it. I'm not sure if we got it to you electronically or not. But Julia, could you explain a little bit our process? Julia, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry. So the Test to Stay program, right?
Yes, please.
So, our goal, again, like Dr. Laura said, is to really help the students that are being directed to quarantine to stay in school. And so, whenever we have a positive case in the school, whether it is in the classroom or one of our athletic programs, if we have students that do have to, if they've been identified as a close contact and we end up putting them in quarantine, then what we'll do is we'll notify the parent that they have to quarantine, but they have the option of coming in every morning before school to do the test that Jim got for us from the county. And as long as, and this is the same type of rapid test that we had last year. And so the results will come in within at 15 minutes. It usually takes 15 minutes for the nurse to be able to read it. So we'll notify the parent right away as soon as we have the result. And as long as they're negative, they can come to school for that day. But this is kind of similar to what we're doing with the employees. The isolation time for employees that are positive had gone from 10 to 5 days, but it's really for the purpose of coming to work. And so outside of work, they're still supposed to isolate for 10 days. So similarly, for students that are in quarantine, even if they participate in the Test to Stay program, they can just come to school for the purpose of getting instruction in the classroom, but they cannot stay for any other activities. They really need to go home and quarantine outside of school. So the goal really is allowing students, as long as they're negative in the morning, to come to class, attend all of the classes, and then go home during that quarantine period.
Just explain a little bit about the Glover, how we were going to arrange that part.
So, what we wanted to do is, because we have 6 different schools and we didn't want the students who are being directed to quarantine to go to individual schools, where we have planned on going to the Glover field by the girls' locker room, which is right by the parking area. And so we'll have someone there to do the test in the morning. We're hoping to start at 7 o'clock for middle and high school students, 7 to around 7:20 or so for 6 through 12, and about 7:20 to 7:40, 7:45 for K through 5 students who are in quarantine. So that leaves us enough time for us to read all of the tests and then notify the parents so they can take the student to school. So that is kind of our goal. In order for us to make sure that we have the consent in place, because we need to always make sure that we have the parental consent before we do the rapid tests. Once a student is identified to have to quarantine, what we'll do is we'll make sure that the parent gets the consent form. So we'll do a one-time consent for that quarantine period so that they can come every morning and then they'll do the test. Obviously, if the student tests positive, whether there's even if they're asymptomatic, they will need to go home and isolate. This program is only for students that are asymptomatic. Any student that becomes symptomatic should definitely not come to this test, but go and get tested and get us the results. And when a student is symptomatic, we need the students to still get the PCR test in order to return to school.
I hope that that's clear to everyone. We got to make sure that the document that has been prepared is Alex and I have already spoken, and we'll take Julia's materials and get it out to the public, through a separate email, so everyone has a copy of it.
Does anybody have any questions about what we've talked about so far? 'Cause I know there's been a lot. Michael?
I think I saw a document from the New York State Department of Health saying they had a chart saying what days you would need to test, and it seemed like they were not recommending every single day of the quarantine period, but like at least 3 or 5 out of the days. I don't know. Does that sound familiar to you?
The one that I saw, I think that was not in our memo for education. It was the one for the public. There were 2 separate Department of Health memos that came yesterday or the day before. And the second one was that chart, which really had nothing to do with schools. It had to do with the public sector. And I think it was actually nursing homes and facilities like that.
And I know the one from yesterday from the State Department of Health did say that they were expecting new school guidelines from the CDC soon, they said. So something
Brewing.
interesting to see what they say.
Exactly. I don't know what it'll be, but I'm on the lookout for it.
Leah?
Thank you. Jim, thank you very much for picking up those tests. I know a lot of people have been eagerly anticipating being able to do this, so it's fantastic that we can offer it to everyone. Julia, I just wanted to clarify, when a student is testing to stay, that process is for 10 days. How long is the period of time that they have to continue to be negative before they can fully come back to school?
It's 7 days. If you continue to be negative for 7 days, I think that's what the regulation said, then they can stop testing.
Thank you.
John? You're on mute, John.
I think you said that if that you have to get a negative COVID test to return to school after testing positive. Is that correct?
No, this would only be for students that are in quarantine because they have been identified as a close contact. So they would have never tested positive. So these are students that didn't test positive, but is a close contact. And in order for them to be able to come to school every day, we need a negative test result in the morning for them to stay in school.
Okay, I got. You mentioned something about needing a negative test to come back. What was that circumstance?
If they were symptomatic?
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. If they're symptomatic, then they must go and get a PCR test. And
We're not providing those.
No, we're not.
We don't have access.
Because a lot of the problems that people just are not able to get tests.
Right.
Yeah.
And how are we dealing with that issue?
Well, we don't have any magic bullet either. We don't have those PCR tests. We don't have available to us.
So it's kind of, I mean, it's a problem everywhere. So
Yes.
I did see that the governor added SUNY Purchase as another test site, PCR test site as of, I don't know. I saw the announcement today. I don't know when that will begin, but hopefully we'll see more of that. Ian had his hand up.
Yeah. First of all, congratulations. Getting tests to stay in place is, I think, a huge step forward. And just to reiterate the importance of vaccinations. So I'm just curious, do we have, I know I sent this note to you, Dr. Lauro, do we have a sense yet of specifically what our vaccination rate is among students by campus?
I'm going to punt a little over here to Julia, who I've been asking to keep track, and with the best we can. Let me just also piggyback on that for a minute and then let Julia speak. we need cooperation from the parents. Again, this is one of those things that it's not like some of the other types of vaccines. So we need to ask people to tell us and produce the documents so the nurse can report into the system, and then that's a way we can get an accurate count. So anything we have is thanks to the people who have given us that information, but I don't believe it's very accurate. I do believe there are probably more of them out there that we just don't have the copy of on. And we do the same thing on the staff side, and Julia just finished some of that, so she can speak to both of those points. Julia?
Sure. So in terms of students, like Dr. Laura said, we actually don't have an accurate count. Last time we looked at it, I know it was definitely less than 50%, but I think it's higher. It should be higher. I know that whenever we have a case and there's a question, then the parents will provide the card, and so at that point we'll have the information. But whenever we ask a question or we send out communication asking parents to give us the information, we don't always get it. So I really couldn't tell you accurately what percentage of our students are vaccinated, but certainly I think over 90% of our staff are fully vaccinated. In terms of booster shots, I think a little less than 50%. I think that's where we are in terms of staff, but that's the information we have.
Yeah, no, well, thank you. I mean, it's, if the governor does, make any moves on mask mandates, it seems like it'll be at least at an 80% threshold. And so just really, really, really encourage parents, like if you're getting your kids vaccinated, tell the district, because collectively, if we're able to achieve that goal, we not only have in-person instruction, we actually have the potential to have mask optional in-person instruction. So we just need a really team effort. If we can get our student vaccination rate to equal our teacher vaccination rate of 90+, we will absolutely be above whatever threshold the governor set. So I just feel like we as a town could achieve that goal. So if you're getting your kids vaccinated, please, well, first of all, get them vaccinated if you believe in that, and report it, because it's just, we can win as a team if we do this.
We will continue to remind people. Any of my communications will always have a reminder in it.
Yeah.
And also what hasn't been defined there is what fully vaccinated will mean by that. Maybe
Yeah,
that
true.
we're
Moving target.
most people who are fully vaccinated are past 6 months. So booster
Yeah.
seems to be the new standard.
Yeah.
Leah? Sorry.
No, I
Go
just had
ahead,
one follow-up question on just the instructional day. So just, I know we got a few messages today, because I think it would be helpful just how you think about what counts for an instructional day. Because I think some of the concerns is not so much what's a snow day or virtual inclement, but do we add another day at the end of the year to make up for whatever academic, less than academic performance? So I think it'd be helpful for folks to understand how you think about that.
Sure, and let me just mention that this, regardless of what we did today, even if it were a snow day, and even if Friday's a snow day, I believe we have enough built in. We haven't used anything in the calendar, so it doesn't mean any add-on. So we're above the number that we need for the state, so that there's no loss in state aid. That's above that 180 number, and we have that built in. And now we're at a point where, after we just did what we did today, for the reasons I did it, which we thought would help keep continuity and keep things flowing, so there wasn't a break in coming back from a holiday and getting everybody back on board. That was today's intent. As I said, I wouldn't do that on Friday, the way things are going. And the reason is what you said. What is good instruction? And I think that what we're finding from the feedback that we're getting is that it's I want to just say it's probably all over the place on the elementary level in terms of a minimum to a maximum. 612 just seems to have it because they're used to it. And I'm not blaming the elementary teachers. I'm just simply saying the way the program has been developing and the way we've been expecting people to do things, it's just different. And I'm on the record, and I will repeat it again. I feel the same way that a large number of people do, that what you can do with a kindergarten, first grade student online is very different than what you could do probably from second grade on up. It's just the child is not quite there yet in terms of having the wherewithal and the concentration, all of that. And the teachers know that. And so in fairness, I think they want to provide a good opportunity for every student. I think we're still trying to figure out what that is and trying to do it better. Asynchronous learning is not the answer. You know, we need to go to an interactive, synchronous learning environment, K through 12. And then I would be satisfied to say we can do that every time something happens, because we would have it all in place, but we don't. And the example I gave, and again, I apologize because some of you have heard me say this a number of times this week. It goes back, and John Bryce will remember this from 10 years ago when we were doing construction. The classroom of the future, if you were to build it and we do it and do it right, it needed to have the sound systems built in, the one with the lapel that you put on the teacher, the camera that follows the teacher, which is the voice around the room. And we would never have this problem going forward because it would truly be interactive. But it's a very expensive thing to put in place for every classroom, and then the training that goes along with it. But our teachers are at that point where I know they would be ready to do that. I'm not sure financially we're ready to equip all of the buildings that way. And I'm not even sure, I'm not an architect, so that's not the question I would throw to John. And even from an instructional point of view, I know what it's like because I've taught in something like that in my grad program. It is very different. So we're not there. We may have a room or two or a place or two in the district that does that, but for the most part, we don't. And that's the problem. So if I were to get up right now and go get my cup of coffee over there, you wouldn't see me. And it's the teacher that's feeling badly about, oh, I have to go take her Johnny over here. And now I've left those students that are watching, they don't see me. And a kindergarten, first grader losing the teacher is like, okay, free for all time. And that's what the tension is. And they want to do it right. And we're not there yet. We're just not putting it together correctly. And so I just don't want to have it continue looking like we're doing something to satisfy a requirement that we have had a session and we can count the day, but then doing it incorrectly only upsets not only the child, but the parents who are seeing what the child is going through and the frustration and are saying this is a waste. So it's finding that balance. So what I guess I'm trying to answer Ian and the public is, and to me, the ideal situation would be what I described. It's going to take us a long time to get to that. And I don't even know if there's any school district in the area that has that. I don't think there is anyone. So it's not just us. So we need to look at how to get to where we need to be. I'm not saying that we can't do it with what we have. It is possible. And they did do it during the COVID pandemic shutdown that we had. So there are ways to be interactive and to have a teacher conduct a class and a lesson. And we just need to make sure that everybody's on board equally to provide the same experience K through 12, and that everyone gets it, the proper instruction so the day can count as an official day. I hope that we don't have too many more of these and that we can remain with the tools that we have in place that we started on and we were talking about. Now that that's in place, I hope these are few and far between. A snow day is a snow day as far as I'm concerned for Friday. That's a snow day.
Leah?
Yes, thank you. So Julia, I just wanted to circle back for a second about the symptomatic student who tests positive on a PCR test. I think you said they need a negative PCR test to return to school. They need a negative rapid test.
No. When somebody tests positive, they don't need to test again to come back. They just have to finish out the isolation. It's just that when you have a symptomatic student, Department of Health wants us to make sure that we get a PCR test result.
Got it. Just to show that they were positive. They don't need
just
to
to
test
show that
out.
they're negative so that they can come back to school.
Okay,
So
that's what I'm confused about. Having had kids with COVID, that it could take months for that to happen.
Right. So symptomatic students who have not gotten tested yet. So as soon as you start having symptoms, they need to go get a PCR test that shows that they're negative before they can come back. A student that tests positive will need to finish out the 10 days and then they can come back, because we don't want them to get tested again because they can test positive like for 90 days.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
John?
I just wanted to tell Dennis, which I'm sure he's aware of this, that things were as chaotic in Connecticut, where my office is. The same thing. They started out with a delay and they closed. People were stuck everywhere. So, this was a really unusual event. That's my only comment. Thanks.
Yeah, the timing was bad. I'll finish up so I don't take too much time on this, but it's just like my message continues to be that we're in a very good place. And just continue to, what the board members are saying is true. We weren't there 3-4 weeks ago, and that had nothing to do with anything that transpired before. A lot of things have happened, and we've taken advantage of them. The arrival of those kits to implement test to stay, the new procedures from CDC, the timing of that. Getting Julia back is a great help too, because she's our expert and she's been really extremely helpful, even while being out on leave, in terms of helping the district get to this point. So again, thank you very much, Julia, for all the work that you've done and continue to do for us. In going through the rest of it, we have another issue that came up, and it'll be on the agenda tonight, and that is substitutes. So we always have to worry about whether and that's what would have happened this morning. If I had let the delay stay in place, I would bet my bottom dollar that we probably would have had maybe 30 or 40% of the staff show up, mainly because of the accidents, and they would have been stuck, or they would have sat out, realized how icy it was like I did, and I walked out my door. I would have probably turned around and went back in the house because it was really dangerous. It was too much to take the car out. So with that, we're making the pitch to get more people to truly volunteer and really, help the situation along. So I'm making a recommendation, and there is a board item for you to act on. What it is increase the pay. And what we're trying to do is to move through, let me explain that our pool, our ASOP program that we use, all the school districts in the area through BOE subscribe to it. So subs go through this general program, a pool. The teacher would normally pick, say I'm being absent, post it. A sub might get contacted that they know, or the sub may see it and pick up the spot and then show up to work. That's sort of how it works. The problem is it's been broken in the sense that there are so few substitutes out there and such a demand from all the school districts that we don't get our fair share. So I asked the principals, how does this happen? How are you covering? Well, what I found out, and this was a surprise to me, that many of them had their favorites, that people who work just, for Pelham and for them, which was great, by the way. I'm not criticizing it. It was good. They were all approved and everything. That's not the problem. So they had their little pocket of some subs, and that's how they've been able to do it. And the coverage from within the building. So on our teacher contract, a person can sub for another person if they were to use their free period, their unassigned period, or a lunch, whatever they want to give up, and cover someone else, and they get paid for it. And that's been going on, and Jim's got some data on the numbers, and we could talk about that when the motion comes up on the floor. But let me just finish conceptually in this portion so I don't keep talking. What it is I'm trying to do this. So what we did was we moved from our present rates, and I may have the wrong numbers, but what they are presently, and moved it all the way up to 185, 200, and 215. That is from, I think, 115, 125, and 135, if I have my numbers correct. So it's a substantial increase. The idea would be two important things. One, the person would commit to be with us for a 15-day straight period, consecutive days that they would commit to us. The second piece of it is it's renewable, and then they would be paid the higher rate. And we will continue that through the end of the school year. We have COVID funds. We figure we can cover it that way, so it's not a burden on the budget. Also, Jim has them data that's interesting in terms of what we've been paying. So if we were paying our teachers at $52 a shot, it's cheaper to do this than it is to do that. And it's not the money. What I want to say is what I'm beginning to realize from sitting and speaking to the teachers, as well as speaking to the principals, is that they're burning out because, I don't know, there's a reason for teaching 5 classes on the secondary level, and there's a reason for teachers to have breaks at the elementary level. And when you start to take them up and just put them in with another group of kids, They aren't getting enough downtime to keep that up over a period of time. Now, they've been doing that since last spring, and then they continued to do it September, October, November, December, which is how we got to where we are today. I'm trying to take that, let them get their days, their time back to allow them to kind of recuperate and just step aside a little bit, and allow us a pool that the principals will have that they'll be able to tap into to continue the operation as we see it and know it, as long as there's this COVID going on and absentee rates are higher than normal on the staffing side. So that's the proposal there. Does anybody have a question? Well, we can take it up, when the motion comes up. But that's
I saw Vinny had a hand raised right before you moved to this topic. So I don't know, Vinny, was your question already answered?
It was more just a comment that I was the quarantine period where we hear the number 5, the reduction of the quarantine period, but for students it's actually 7, and people need to know that I don't want there to be any confusion between the two.
It's 10, Julia's saying.
Oh, it's actually 10.
Until it
my
gets
error
changed.
there. So
It's still 10. They haven't changed it.
okay,
Both
But 5 for
isolation-
teachers, right?
but 5 is for some
Right.
reason I thought it was 7 now for the students. Okay.
No, the 7 is for test to stay. You would have to test negative for 7 days in a row, but that takes into account the weekend, right? So
Okay, good. I'm glad I asked that then.
Okay. I got Sue, John, then Michael.
Dennis, this is probably a very quick question, but so with the substitutes, they will commit to work 15 days consecutively. Do we always have need for that many substitutes?
Yes. So what we did was we surveyed and we looked back at the data, and between Steve, myself, and Jim, we are trying to come up with a number with the principals. What they're saying is some of them need 2 a day, some of them 3 a day, some of the worst case I think is 4 a day. So we might be talking about a pool of 15 to 16 people.
Yeah.
And that's all we would do. Now, if let's say at the end of the 15 days, we realize that somebody's not using someone, we can easily drop. And I said, that's great, you can go backwards. The same way as if it increases, they can go up. So
Okay.
there's enough flexibility in what
that's exactly my question. Okay.
It's not a commitment from now till June. It's a commitment for 15 days at a time, not knowing what's going on with COVID. That's why we did a 15-day period.
Great. Thank you.
John?
So I understood there's a pool that's that schools throughout Westchester can draw from, but we have our own little private pool here. Is that right?
It's allowed on the ASOP. Some people can say Pelham only anyway. I mean, we're not doing something
Okay.
that's not. Each of the districts do that. Some parents who do it want to stay within their own community, and they'll check off only Pelham or only Mamaroneck or only whatever.
Okay.
But others who
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Michael?
I just wanted to go back to the kind of asynchronous virtual learning, because I just from my experience with young elementary students, I realized back in March 2020 that I am not able to teach. I'm not able to teach my own kids. So we started off relatively enthusiastic today, but kind of lost steam somewhere between trick words and long division. So yeah, I think anything, I think it's certainly not a replacement for in-person instruction. And my kids didn't really get a whole lot of instruction today. I did maybe my best, but I tried. And I just wanted to, on the test to stay, I was looking at I wonder, has Westchester County given guidance, or are we basing this on New York State Health Department?
Go ahead, Julia. Right now it's the one that's coming out of the state, and they kind of punted and said, we'll do it and we'll leave the county. The county can say leave it with the state, and that's what this county has done. So it's been through the state.
Okay. I do see the state document from the 23rd is saying this during the 7-day period, a minimum test, you have to test at least 3 times. So I guess you could test, every school day, or you could just do the three times. are we planning to test every day or do the 3 or something in between?
Julia, do you want
Oh,
to?
well, our plan was to just test every day. I think if we see that that is not necessary, maybe down the road we can change that to less number of times. But I think to start, it'll probably be a good idea to start with every day.
So this brings up the numbers for a minute, because I think what we're getting at, Michael, is, you might be thinking, oh my goodness, how are you going to do this? And it's going to compound itself. Until I realized when Julia said, and this is why I said, God bless her to do this, because every day it's a moving target. There are people coming into the quarantine and there are people going out of the quarantine. So it's really hard to get a handle on just how many. But we're thinking 20 something. Is that correct, Julia?
On daily basis.
Yes.
Number of students that are quarantining, probably around that much. Yeah.
So the testing program to come, it's not hundreds is what I'm getting at. So It makes it easier for us to handle, especially in that time period. So we may have a potential problem if the numbers really go off the charts, then we probably would have a difficult time sustaining the program as we described it.
But I think with, I think more students are getting vaccinated. And so, whenever we have a situation, the parents will let us know that, oh, my Johnny got, fully vaccinated as of, 3 weeks ago. So like numbers are not that bad because parents are getting kids vaccinated. And that's when we kind of, record in our spreadsheet who is vaccinated so that we know for the future whether we need to quarantine them or not. But what we do let the parents know, even if when the students are vaccinated, that they were considered a close contact because they should keep an eye on their students.
So on my other note here, and I promise you it's not much longer. My other note, I'm just trying to give you this box that I really feel that we put together and it's really working. The PTA. So the PTA Council has been really wonderful, and I've been working with them as well. We sort of came up with something which is going to get thrown at them tomorrow at their meeting, and some of you were on that call. But one of the thoughts we had when Anne-Marie and I were speaking, that why don't we just make a little contest out of it with the kids and see if we can encourage the schools to outdo the other school.
Yes.
By giving a chart, and I've done this before years ago. John may remember some of the things that we used to do, but it just create kids like contests. And we talked about not making it a monetary award. So we talked about brainstorming a little bit that there's a lot of, what should I say, famous people in town that maybe we could tap somebody to either read poetry we do it as an online thing to the classroom that would be special that particular day for the school that won, and run a program, which we haven't really fully described yet, but the idea was with the PTAs, working with the district, trying to encourage parents to just vaccinate the kids. So that, go back to what Ian said, we would be ready when the governor said something, our numbers will be up there. And in the meantime, by the way, let's not lose sight of the fact that we're protecting everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the message to the parents. We're protecting everyone. If you're protecting your child, you're protecting your neighbors and the children in that class, the teacher in that school, and all the other workers that are in the building. So that's my goal, and I would love to see us do that. And I think it's a great idea, and I think it'll take off. I know the PTA, and I know how good they are, and I know this community, they'll rally behind it. So
yeah, it's a great idea. Great idea.
Julia, I had, or I guess Dennis and Julia, but the testing program that I tried to plug, my understanding was that it's for up to 20% of our population a week to be tested, right? So there was an exception this past week if we could enroll up to 100% of students for the testing program, right? That with the notion that we're all coming back from the holidays. So we'd like people to enroll in the program. We're not yet close to the 20% where we would have to randomize who we would select, right? But that is something to keep in mind.
Well, or
is that not the case anymore?
Well, it is the case, but in the conversation with the county and our discussion with the superintendents just about a week ago, it was mentioned that they were, why cut it? They're not doing 20% all over the place, so they could handle it. So basically, I said, just keep bringing them in. I don't know at what point they will cut it, but
that's great.
If we can get more, let's get more, and just keep doing it.
That's fantastic. I mean, we're certainly at a different spot now than when we rolled out this particular partnership in September. So it's good to
They've
know.
been phenomenal, by the way. I mean, the turnaround, right, Julia, has been wonderful. They've been communicating with us. Why don't you give I know people are anxious and we're not hiding data. You want to just speak to the latest data? You just put the lovely chart together and you can explain what you did and just explain briefly where we're at. I think it's a good indicator of where we're at.
Let's see. The one set of numbers I gave you today was just about testing. We started with around 400. October, November, December, we've been kind of hovering around 300 to 400 number of samples, even though we had over 1,000 registered. And this week was the first time we actually went over 600. So we actually did hit about 20%, a little less than 20% this past Monday. But before then, it was really around 300 to 400 that we were able to get the samples. I do want to just speak to this week's test because we did have 611 samples collected. And we ended up with 44 positive cases. And I just want to share the information that all of these folks that gave us the sample were asymptomatic as of Monday. Now, a handful of them did develop symptoms after, and they did test positive again on a different test. But a majority of those 44 were asymptomatic, meaning they wouldn't have known unless they participated in this weekly testing. So, that was only 600. So if we had tested, a lot more, I think a lot more people would have, realized that they were positive. So we may have a lot more people walking around who may be positive. So we do want to encourage as many people as possible to, take advantage of this because I know everyone's very careful about, their family members and all that. So.
So to that point, one of the questions I asked the county, and I still haven't gotten my answer yet, but it was stated at a meeting that I was with them a while ago. And the reason the 20% is that it's a statistically significant sample to be able to extrapolate then from the data and project the future. So if I made a bunch of words there as a math teacher, so I'm sorry. But so if you took 44, and you took the 611, and 611 into 2,800 is approximately 4 to 5 times. So you multiply that, and you would have about 200 students, a little over 200 students that are probably infected. So we still have a way to go. I think some of these kids are actually home because parents have kept them home, and we don't know until they tell us that they have it or that they've been tested and they're no longer, it's that's the problem we're having. But that I just to put it in the context of, and this is where I want to return something back to normal. So there was all this hysteria and nobody knew, and the news fanned the problem with all of the reporting, and I'm trying, it's all over the place. It's we are going to have really a lot of cases. Well, okay, I'm not happy that we even have 200, but it's about 10%. It's not even 10%. It's for 2,800 students, it's less than 10%. It's 7 or 8%. And with that, we have a handle on how to handle and work with all of this. The point being that, okay, those parents that were out there, and I put some things in place, and our absentee rate went up, and the board was interested in the data, and I have it. They did jump. We did jump up to 500 or 600 students out, especially, the day before the holiday is always a bump up anyway. And it's starting to return to normal, which is part of why I wanted to be in school today. But, we'll see what tomorrow brings. With all that being said, we can roll back the exceptions. And the exceptions being, if you feel that your child is going to be compromised, or you feel that you're going to bring something home, all well and good. I'm fine with it has to end. We need to get back to normal. And I'd like to do that as of Monday, because we'll have our test program in place to stay. And so that's the plan. We've got all these tools in place. I wanted to end my remarks by saying we really have done a lot. We've come a long way. We've allowed some exceptions. Now we need to return to normal, and the normal would be starting Monday. So that's how I was going to end this evening's comments.
Ian?
Just a very quick question. So I 100% agree, the desire to get back to normal. Of the kids who've actually been infected, how many have been hospitalized? Just order of magnitude. Do we know?
I don't think we know that, do we?
I don't know of any, or at least not parents have not told us that. They've only told us that they're positive.
Yeah.
I do know that there are some people who are fully vaccinated that are very, very sick. So, I do want to kind of put in that more, plug one more time to please, go get your
100%.
booster if you qualify, because I think that's really going to be important in how sick or, not
Yeah.
you're going to be.
And just in general, if you're vaccinated and you do get COVID, the likelihood of hospitalization is very low.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that sort of ends my remarks. I mean, I think we've come a long way. I'm happy where we are and feeling good about moving forward.
Thank you for all that. A lot of information that was worth the time. Does Michael has a question. I just want to make sure we address any questions that you have for Dr. Lauro. Michael?
Do you have, I may have missed this, how many or what percentage decided to go use the sort of virtual option this week?
Okay, the attendance rate when we, and you know what, they're on the desk and they're not with me, but let's see if I can do it from the top of my head. Don't hold me to exact numbers. When I started on December 20th, that was that Monday. It was prior to the holiday. And we just took that as a normal day, and we took that as a benchmark. And then I looked at, and I asked Sharon to look back at the data for us online, and we would run on 200. Remember, we have 2,802 students thereabouts. We were running in the 240 to 260 range on a normal day absentee rate. Then on Tuesday the announcement had gone out, and then Tuesday the number jumped and doubled. And then on Wednesday, it went up a little bit more, and then it went off the charts on Thursday. But Thursday, if you look at a holiday like we just had, where it comes to be 2 weeks or a week and a half, it's not unusual to have a real spike. And I think it jumped closer to 600 to 700 is the number that she had officially on there. I have it all, and I'm going to get the official numbers to you, because we were getting phone messages from people giving us approximate numbers. And then later on, the numbers changed, and I said, what was going on? Well, kids were late to school, and they had given me the phone-in number, and then the final number at the end of the day that was logged. So I'm going to give you all that data, and I'll make sure it's to you by Friday. I actually left that on my desk yesterday. But that's what happened, and that's why if we return Monday to a more normal approach, and I hope the parents that, again, opted to do this were probably in the 300 to 400 student range. That 300 or 400, I hope, will understand that what we put in place should address their concerns. And if that's the case, send your kids back to school, please, so we have a normal, everyday type face-to-face educational program moving forward.
Any other questions? Okay, this brings us to the moment where we have our athletics presentation. Mr. Hodge.
All right, good evening. I'm going to try to share my screen with everyone right now.
Christian, while you're doing that, let me just insert myself a minute. I just want to thank Christian for putting the whole thing together. We kind of rehearsed it a few times in the office and looked at it, and it's only, there's so many good things going on here, and I just want to mention that as a preface to the whole thing in the presentation. And we still, as it has always been while I was there, and it still continues to be, a very active community when it comes to extracurricular and sports. And I think the program here, as outlined by Christian, will show you that even despite all of the things that we're hearing about COVID and about staying home and not participating, it's not the case. We have the opposite happening, and I don't want to take his thunder away. There's some really good data here.
Thank you, Dr. Laura. Just want to make sure that everybody can see that. Oh, let me get that.
You get an A for technology use.
Yeah. There we go. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yep.
Good evening. Good evening. Thanks again, Dr. Laurel. First, again, I would like to thank everyone for coming tonight and allowing me to give this presentation. I'd like to thank the Board of Education, Dr. Champ, Dr. Laurel, our district administrators, the principals, the coaches, my assistant, Tony, the Booster Club, the Pelham Manor and the Pelham Village Police, and everyone else that actually gives support to the athletic department. We have an awesome athletic department. We have great kids. We have great coaches. We have a great community, and I'm just really proud of what we're doing and moving, even under the conditions of what we're dealing with. But as you can see here, as we begin, that some of the things that we do athletically, it's really amazing, and it's a really a shout out to the entire school community around the support for athletics. So first of all, when I was supposed to give this, I believe earlier, maybe like in December, and it was moved to January, and we were going to be looking at basically the recap of the fall. So that's kind of like the beginning of the presentation. As you can see, our numbers even coming back in, with COVID and everything surrounding that, we still had, almost 400 high school students participating in athletics. And the numbers that we had on our teams are really amazing. I really, just making sure that, that we can outfit everyone and that we field all of our teams on the high school level. It's truly amazing. But as you can see, we pretty much have a full comprehensive athletic program that offers our students a lot of opportunities. And even on our middle school level or modified, which encompasses our grades 7th and 8th grade students, we had 250 plus students that participated this past fall in a variety of sports that some of the school districts out there, they don't have 37 kids on a modified football team, and we're pushing 40 kids on our modified football team, and that's credit to the coaches, to the community, to the kids that want to be a part of that. And as you can see on some of these sports, especially like on the soccer, most of those teams, there's no roster cap on these teams. So we actually filled 2 teams. We have 2 soccer teams, two boys soccer teams, 2 girls soccer teams, 2 volleyball teams, and just opportunity for students to just be able to participate. Moving into this fall, with supply chain issues around the country, I know you probably heard of bus driver shortages around the country, and it hit us also. So we had some issues this fall. Knock on wood, our transportation provider really does a great job with us. We really haven't had many delays this year, or not being able to offer us transportation. I put that in there because it really, we have districts in our surrounding areas that they've had so many transportation issues that it's been really like major topics of conversation in our athletic directors meeting in the section, where people are trying to brainstorm, seeing if they can work with each other to help each other out. Because when you get to the game and you have to wait, you get up to about 40 minutes late, or a school can't get there, it causes a lot of issues. We did have some issues down at Glover early on with the fiber, but I'm happy to say I was talking to Mr. Sabalos, and that's all done. The fiber is installed, which is awesome, because as you know, we have local live streaming for all of our contests, and it's just been wonderful. So I'm really looking forward to the spring, being able to get down to Glover when we have a lot of activities going on, and we will be able to live stream that at the high speed rate. That will really make that great for everyone. We dealt with our COVID cancellations, knock on wood. We really didn't have any cancellations of games like we did like last year due to we did have a couple of schools that had to cancel, but it caused us some game changes. We had a little heat index issues when the storm came through. Certain schools actually had to shut down due to field conditions. We had one little minor field damage on the new turf, but it really didn't have anything to do with shutting any of us down. One of the areas that is an issue is supply. The supply chain shipments have been delayed, and some of the items, staples that we normally would have received like in August and September, we actually haven't even received them yet. So a lot of items are on back order nationally. So, we're hoping that will get better. And some schools, some schools are cutting teams, and that was the one nice thing that I really like about what we're doing in Pelham is that we don't really have to cut teams due to the low numbers, but it does cause an issue with our schedule when other schools are canceling their teams, because it has an impact on the overall schedule. So moving into the high risk sports, the state actually has deemed they've identified high risk sports to include cheerleading, volleyball, football, basketball, ice hockey, lacrosse, and club rugby. And pretty much, working with Julia and the COVID coordinator, we were able to, come up with a plan and a process to make sure that, our non-vaccinated students are testing weekly. It is really good to say, out of about 400 some students, the last number that I had just before the break was about 23 students total that were not vaccinated that were having to test weekly. And we have a process where they get their test, and that test has to be provided. The test report has to be provided to the coach, and then we move on from there. And then if they don't provide that, then they cannot participate or playing games or practices on that until we get that negative report. The big highlight of any athletic program is the academic success of our students, and it's really amazing when I'm auditing our student athletes to look at our place in the state, how we compare to other school districts, and we are like one of the top in the state. As you can see there, we have, in order to be named as a Scholar Athlete Team recognition, 75% of that roster has to have a 90 or above GPA. And all those teams right there met that criteria. So from the sense of how, when you take a look at, the whole, athletic department, how it actually works hand in hand with the academic program that we have, the great academic program that we have, as well as it kind of ties in really good with our strategic plan when you're looking at like the whole child part comes in mind, where the students are, they have to really be able to balance academics and the physical demands of practice and making sure that they get their work done, and just the emotional part of all of that. And we still have our teams performing at a very high level, athletically as well as academically. And then this next screen shows, so these teams, everybody on our team, everybody on these teams that had a 90 or above GPA, they're awarded with an individual pin that from the state that designate them as a scholar athlete as an individual, which again, very high numbers. So we had a very successful fall season. We had, several all-state selections, several all Section 1, first team all Section 1. We had all leagues. Our level of competition is really high in a lot of our sports. And, it's funny because when I was, we had our league meeting the other day, and you have to kind of like rank your teams when we start taking a look at where we're going to put teams in the leagues. And And I don't really have to say much because a lot of the athletic directors, they come out and say, okay, well, Pelham girls volleyball, well, you got to give them a 1 because they've been winning the league now for the last 3-4 years. And as you can see, we ended up with a great season, 16-3, coach of the year. And the girls are very successful and very happy in that program. Football was a very unbelievable school year for the football program. This is a great testament to a program that 3 years ago was in a developmental league. And now we're at the point where we have over 40 plus athletes on our team, and we are competing at a very high level against all of the top teams in the section. And at one point during the year, we were honorable mention ranked in the state. So we had some really good high performances there in football. Tennis was a great year for tennis and field hockey. We had actually a state finalist that's only a sophomore. I'm looking forward to seeing the development with Olivia moving forward and the other girls in our program. And our field hockey program continues to be one of the more competitive programs. And we had a first team all-state with Eileen Mazzaro. And our boys soccer team, as you can see, just a lot of, all league, all section honorable mention players, just students at a really high level, as well as our girls have really moved forward. And we're starting to be one of those teams that, most of the other schools are kind of worried about, which is a good thing. And our cheerleading program has really started to move forward. Our numbers have gone up. They started off the season this summer with a pre-team camp that, as you can see, 2 of our cheerleaders were named All-American at that camp, which that's, great momentum to help continue to build that program. And they're doing a great job. Cross country, again, all section performers, all county performers. The one nice thing I like about our cross country program is that it's like, they have a very strong family atmosphere. When you go, I went up to Wappingers to watch them in a meet, and, they got the tent set up. Everybody is helping each other out. I mean, it's a, really nice program, a testament to the coaches. And in that program, we're pushing over 70 plus kids. So the participation level is really, really good, really high. And this was, our swim program. As you can see, this is the picture on here. Again, all league honors. Swimming is a little tougher this year with COVID. We're over at St. Lawrence College, and they've kind of like cut. They've had some issues and where they've had to close the pool at times. But during the fall season, our girls were able to get some meets in. And in that picture right there, Katie Douglas came back to present her Olympic swim cap to our program, which will be displayed in our trophy case. So overall, taking a look at our numbers from our fall sports, very high numbers on the all state, all section, all conference, honorable mention, all league, just unbelievable, to be honest, to see that our athletes are competing at a really high level. And moving into the winter season, we've started off the winter with a great. We just finished up a great boys and girls basketball tournament, our Booster Club tournament. I'd like to give a shout out to the Booster Club for helping sponsor that again. It was a really good success. Our teams played well. We've had no real issues there. It was a great tournament. As you can see, the sport offerings that we offer, very high numbers across the board. Not a lot of issues. Ice hockey is still very strong, and indoor track, we have to get more than 2 buses because we're pushing about 70 or plus students in that program. So our numbers and our participation is very high in our winter sports right now. This picture here is an awesome picture because this is a first time ever game at Hutch. So, this is a great shout out to the school board, to the community that, wanted to make sure that you have a new school. We put a gym in there and we are utilizing it. We utilize this gym every night for practices. This was actually our first game that we had in Hutch. I think it was the freshman boys against Edgemont. And our modified sports teams are doing well. We have really good numbers. We field 2 teams on each level. Boys and girls have 2 teams each, and they start their games this week. And then moving into our spring, our sport offerings, again, full comprehensive program across the board. Just really looking forward to. A lot of the coaches do a lot of off-season conditioning with all of these student athletes, and just really looking forward to getting into the spring season when we get there to offer them another good opportunity, as well as the modified. So one of the things that I'm really excited about is I noticed like the website needed a little work. And, when I got here, just been kind of playing with our website and was able to really at this point pretty much put everything that a parent or a student would need as far as an information site, starting with the Final Forms, which is our new data management type program for athletics, for registration, sports start dates. They can click on winter physicals, all the dates, get the coaches lists, everything that you pretty much need for information for the athletic department is on this, is on our website. We also do have our local live stream is on there. We have the transportation release form, which is a really good tool that allows parents to be able to take their children home from a game, which makes it a lot easier to collect that instead of collecting paper. But I'm really hoping that that more parents really will go to the website to utilize the information that they have regarding. I've also threw a little thing on there to show some of our Pelican graduates what they're doing in college under the one section there. It's really nice. So you can go on there and take a look. I think there's almost like 20 plus ex-Pelicans playing at a very high level at the college level all across the country. And the real important stuff is the start dates. So these are also on our website, and we try to get this out so parents can make their, if they got plans, they can take a look and see when we start coming up for the spring, March 14th. We're looking to start the spring season, and that information is on there. And also, I'd like to give a shout out down there to the Unified Basketball. Like that program is still rolling and getting bigger every year. And we actually I applied for a grant, and I did receive that grant. So they're going to be getting new uniforms this year. Our Unified Basketball program. Looking forward to that. And I also threw the fall in there. August 22nd is the date that most people should take a look at for high school fall sports. As of right now, that is the start date for the state. And this information again is always available on the website. So moving forward, one of the nice things with having our facilities are second to none, to be honest. When most of our visitors come to when they come down to Glover, they're just in amazement when they see what we offer our students in our community. One of the nice things is on the new turf, working with Mr. Condon and Mr. Ricky, we were able to get a new scoreboard installed. It's on top of the field house, very large scoreboard, so you'll be able to see that as games are taking place on the new turf, they have a very large scoreboard there. We also have a live stream camera that will be installed on the new turf. So all of our contests on that new turf will be there. Most of you, if you were down at Glover this fall, you probably heard we have a new sound system on the new stadium. Just some, great opportunities. One of the areas for that we do have to improve on is in one of our sports is we're working with the Park and Rec department to offer some youth field hockey clinics to be able to offer our younger students in the district an opportunity to learn field hockey so we can get more kids involved in that. We're also working with some of the PE teachers to be able to offer some units in field hockey to get some interest there. And from a staffing standpoint, all in the fall, all of our positions were filled. The winter, all of our positions are filled. Moving into the spring, we only have maybe like one, I think it's only one position that we still have to fill. Other than that, we'll be ready to roll for the spring. And this slide I'm very proud of. We were league champions with girls with our volleyball, but going back also to that whole child aspect of athletic program and how is it work together. One of the things that I was able to provide and bring to our program was our Pelican Leadership Cabinet, and this is basically these are the captains per se or leaders of their team, and the goal of that is to really be able to offer them some leadership training so then they can then take that back to their programs to help their programs and help their teammates and younger players in the program, JV, even down to the modified. We've had some really good sessions. We've had about 3 sessions this past fall. And in this picture right here, we also have teamed with the Positive Coaching Alliance. And this was a training with the Positive Coaching Alliance on teaching our athletes information on leadership. And it was a really good presenter, and he was very interactive with the students, and they I believe they really enjoyed his enthusiasm and making sure that they kind of understand really what it is to be a leader. And the big thing that he was talking about, it wasn't even really sport related. He was basically saying, you can get more out of, it's not about winning and losing. It's about the leadership and how we played and how we were together. And it was a really nice session. So, and we have some more programs moving forward. And moving forward, I'd also like to be able to offer a summer institute once we can, hopefully we can get back to normal. We can get all the students together and be able to offer that program to our students. And that program is run through the National Federation of High School Sports, which is the governing body of high school athletics in the nation. So I am going to stop sharing.
Christian, could you just, I asked this question, I think it's a relevant point. You didn't mention it, and you might have forgotten, but I thought that with COVID, we would have a decrease. Could you just speak to the number of students participating as compared to a normal year?
Oh, say that again?
The number of students participating in athletics this year as compared to prior years before COVID.
Oh yes. Yeah, the numbers have actually gone up based on what they've had in prior years. Our numbers, to the point that I was really nervous, especially at the modified level, that I didn't have enough uniforms. So I was really digging deep in closets and making sure that and believe it or not, I found some. I found some. So looking back and talking with some of the coaches that have been here for a while, our numbers are actually up across the board, which is a good thing. And and that's a testament again to our students, our parents, our coaches. I even had coaches coming in basically saying, I'm like, oh, what are you gonna do? You're gonna keep 40 kids on it? And they were like, yeah, we're keeping them. And that's especially at the middle school level. You want high participation, in your program. That's really what it's about, to be able to give kids opportunities for introduction, to see, you know, have them try as many activities as possible. And it gets a little tougher as you move up into the higher levels. I mean, that's just basically what it is. But on our modified levels, our numbers are actually through the roof. And there's some school districts that actually can't field modified teams. And I'm like sitting at those meetings, scratching my head like this is crazy, because I could have 3 teams basically in some of these areas. But the issue with that, and I've talked to Dr. Laura about that, is like we wouldn't have anybody to play, because they have to set up the way they set the schedules up. A lot of schools don't offer a lot of teams. I mean, I would love to be able to do that, but then it would just cause other issues. And there is, I talked about national shortages. There is a national shortage of officials right now. The officials has really the numbers. And it was funny yesterday at we had a boys game, and someone said, "Is that guy going to come here to every game?" And the bottom line is it was really at a bad point this summer that they warned us that there's going to be some games, especially at the lower levels, modified, that you might only see one official. So, you know, if you go to a basketball game and a modified game, it might be one person out there reffing the game. But as far as our numbers go, our numbers are very strong, and hoping that we can continue that.
Christian, thank you so much. It's such an excellent report. Like we haven't, in my time on the board, I had one like this, and it does put a lot into context. And I know this is just a snapshot as of now, but certainly gives us some great perspective.
Yeah.
Dennis, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think just the point that what struck me with the statement that Christian made about participation is, I think that with the COVID, and that students were feeling, you know, at home and isolated and all of the things we read and hear about, this is an opportunity for them to come together and to participate and be active with their own peers, and obviously in other school districts as well. So again, my compliments, my congratulations to the athletic department program and the work that you've done, Christian, because it's evident from the participation rate.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any comments or questions for Chris?
Just a quick thank you. As a former Pelham field hockey player and the mom of a former Pelham field hockey player, thank you so much for thinking about that developmental program, because we've certainly seen that, you know, that the numbers in field hockey can go up and down in any given year. So I think it's just a great idea to work with rec and get kids introduced to it sooner. So.
Oh yeah, yep. I actually started a field hockey program about 10 years ago in one of my districts, and it's just another opportunity, definitely, to get, you know, young girls involved and being able, because everybody isn't a soccer player, you know.
And we didn't have enough numbers for the modified
this
year, so this will hopefully solve for that.
Here, I know at that level. So
Michael.
Yeah, I saw on one of the second slide, you mentioned a roster cap, and I guess that means that a certain number, that there's a maximum number.
Yeah. So that's so that denoted the roster cap sport. So like, for example, volleyball, you wouldn't have 30, 40 kids on a volleyball team. So on the volleyball team, you'd have probably at the most maybe 21, 22 at the most. So that's what that states.
And you mentioned that at least at the modified level, sometimes there'll be multiple teams, or is that ever done at the JV level, or
typically not?
More?
Yeah, typically not. So if you take a look at, you know, trends, you know, and I do this based on, you know, looking at the section, looking at other school districts and seeing, you don't typically see like two varsity basketball teams, or two varsity softball teams, or two JV softball teams. You would typically only see one JV team. And again, that's a byproduct of officials, other schools not having enough kids to basically sometimes field their own team, the first team, much less the second team. There are some schools out there, you know, I can tell you, like just off the top of my head, like Arlington, they're a softball crazy school. So they actually have an A team, which is their varsity, and then they have a varsity B team. So that they made the decision that, you know, we're gonna have 2 varsity softball teams. So, and I just think it's a philosophy of what you want, what you think you can carry. Now, what you're doing there is that you are offering kids more of an opportunity to be able to play. But typically, you don't typically see that. It's very rare. And down here in Westchester, I don't really know of anyone that has more than one JV or more than one varsity team.
Can you increase? I mean, even if there's a maximum number that can, I guess, play in games, but could more participate in the practices or?
Yeah, and to be totally honest with you, that's what the coach really has a lot to do with that scenario. So like if there's some coaches that will take a lot more kids to be able to offer them, but then you also have to worry about the coach has got to make sure that there's a real plan in place so parents understand the role, you know, like making sure, you know, so if you are on the team, you know, like, you know, it's a little easier like with track or with swimming, but, you know, with basketball, coming to a practice every day, and if you keep an extra 5 kids and they may not get the games, that could be tough because it's a long season. But I have had coaches that have done that. I've actually done it myself as a head varsity coach. I've kept kids, but you got to like have clear boundaries and understandings that, you know, especially at the varsity level. You know, I can really see it a little more probably at the JV level, because at the JV level, some kids do develop a little, you know, they could develop slower. And you know, I've seen it here in Pelham. I think these 2 kids are in 10th graders. They walked by me the other day. They're like 6'3", 6'4" now. And last year they were my size. I had to say something to the coach. I'm like, what happened to those kids right there? I mean, so, you know, it really varies based on, but it really has got to be the comfort of the coach too, to be able to make sure that they can handle that. Well, like I'll give you a good example. My freshman our freshman boys basketball coach, he just didn't have a heart to cut anybody. And he's got a large team. So and he's handling it very well.
And I think they're undefeated.
Yeah. They're actually tough. I was at that game. They're tough.
There was like a buzzer beater or something last night, right?
Yeah. So Michael, to answer your question, yeah, we do have coaches that will take on more kids on your traditional roster teams.
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about inclusion.
Yes.
And you know, I think that is important, and it sounds like the athletic program is very beneficial. So yes. I'd like to see as many students as possible be included. And I don't, I'm not a coach. I don't totally, clearly there's also the other side to say, part of competing is you actually, you have to improve, and it is a competition. And so it's not just necessarily.
And a lot of our sport, I have to put the roster cap sport on there because it is that, I don't want to like deceive anybody or deceive a parent or students. They need to know that this is a roster cap sport. So like, for example, football, my football coach said if they want to play football, they're playing football. So
but I think for us as a board, in terms of budgeting, if there's a budgetary issue that we, could give more support to allow more students to participate, if there are people being, excluded, that's something for us to think about.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Ian?
I actually did.
Sorry.
Sorry about that. I did incorporate that in my budget proposal for this meeting.
He's already ahead of you, Michael.
Because football helmets are not cheap.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Lack of uniforms should never be the reason for.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I don't ever. Believe me, you don't ever have to worry about that, because on the one slide that I put on there, I implemented a uniform rotation system. So this year, it started this year. So you have like football, I think it was girls tennis. So there's a rotation. Yeah. So we'll always be well outfitted.
All right.
All right, Ian. Sorry.
Thanks for a great presentation. You know, so important part of school spirit. But one thing you said really stood out, just to connect back to the earlier part of the conversation. I think you said of the nearly 400 student athletes, only about 23 are not vaccinated.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So that's spectacular. So I'm just curious, what do you think explains that very high vaccination rate, and how do you think we can get that to be replicated across all students?
So I think in a couple instances where we have large numbers, like on our indoor track team, so they run at the Armory in New York City. So the Armory states you can't come in here unless you're vaccinated. So that right there, that's about 80 something kids right there. And then the other one is, like, for example, swimming. Where we swim, you have to be vaccinated. So those two things help. And you know, the parents now are starting to understand the COVID scenarios that are popping up, and they don't want their kids to have to miss. So I think that's a part of it. I think a part of it is, you know, and we're not like telling anybody you have to go get vaccinated. That's not the message that's coming from the athletic department or the coaches. But the reality is, you know, you could get caught up if you're not, and there's an outbreak, and you may have to sit out longer than certain students. So I think a lot of that, and a combination of a little bit of that, is why you see low numbers of kids that are most of our kids are vaccinated from an athletic standpoint.
Was that 23 for the fall and the winter?
No, that was I got to clarify that. That was for the winter.
Okay.
That was for the winter. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was a small number for the fall also.
Okay. Benny?
Well, Ian stole some of my thunder there with that question, which was a great question. But being a sports guy, I have plenty of other comments and questions.
Oh boy!
You were waiting for this, Chris, weren't you?
Oh yeah, he's got me now. I totally agree with Sue's comment before about the field hockey. I think that's wonderful, and it's long overdue in our community. We've really shown in the last couple of years that we can compete. We've won, you know, the section and the league. So sky's the limit with those girls. And I am totally on board behind that. I do want to make a comment, though, about your presence at games, Christian. Any game that I've ever been to, you've been there. And I'm not the only person that's noticed that, the only parent. Kudos to you for spending the time. I know you live almost an hour away, too, and you make the time for the players. And it's noticed not only by me as a board member, by many, many parents. So thank you for that.
Oh yeah, not a problem.
Very, very important point. And I think people have to realize that. That's a character comment for you. In addition to that, unified sports. Are there any other unified sports available besides basketball?
Bowling.
Bowling. Okay. Is that something that we offer too?
So we don't. And that's something, if you remember last year when I talked to Dr. Champ, I kind of like threw that out at one of the board meetings that I would like to explore about bringing on bowling. And I actually went down and spoke to the person at the Pelham Country Club about a possible site that we could practice there. So bowling is a great sport opportunity to be able to offer for unified sports, as well as a regular program also, just to get more again, going to Mr. Rowe's comment about, and Mr. Mashan, I think more inclusion, you know, because I tell you right now, and you know, I've also thrown out wrestling. I know some people don't like to hear that, but wrestling is an anchor sport for a high school athletic program. And I'll be honest with you, with the students that we have that participate in a lot of sports, and they really only do like that one sport, because, you know, as you move up, wrestling could be a big sport in our district. So I look at that, you know, if we had bowling, I've already had kids come to me and ask me about bowling.
Okay.
So,
Being a hockey family and a hockey guy, I get a lot of questions all the time as it relates to the budget associated with the hockey program and the costs that the parents of the hockey program have to, you know, pay. I think that's a topic. I know it's a touchy topic, but I'm not getting any deeper into it other than to say that I think more communication to the hockey community needs to come out as it relates to that topic.
okay.
It would be helpful.
Yeah.
So far, I was at the game last night. 6 people came up to me, and that was just last night's game, asking me, you know, questions. And it wasn't even their game that they were at, you know, watching. So, and my last point is, you touched on it before about the rotation of new uniforms. That's nice to hear. I've never heard that in the past. I think that information going out is very helpful if people just had an idea of how that works. Is it every 3 years, every 5 years? Is there?
I shared the rotation schedule with Dr. Champ, and basically it's like, it depends on a uniform, but it's like a, you know, quality uniform is typically people that know me. Like, it's funny because some of the people, where were we at? Poughkeepsie came and played in my tournament, and one of my coaches at Pelham said, "Did you buy those uniforms?" Because they know what I offer them, and we only get the top of the line. You only get a high school varsity team the top of the line uniform, so it can last 4 years, you know, and it's typically about 3 to 4 years depending on the sport, for the most part, that you can get, you know, out of it. And the varsity level uniform, it's the same exact uniform that the team would wear at, you know, Syracuse. You know, that's what you get, your high school varsity teams. So it's basically, you're looking at, you know, 3 to 4 years, and then you rotate and move on. Just so you know the process, you typically buy that uniform. You can then pass that on like a football uniform. You know, like, I've always been, you know, I'm not going to throw any brands out there, but there are certain brands that I like because just the way they operate and the way that they give support back to your school down the road. So I basically, when I do that, I make sure that I have the uniform. So 3 years from now, if we have an issue, I can go back and we can take care of that issue. So you want, like football, for example, you want a uniform that you can pass to the JV. So, and that's basically how that cycle works. Modifieds, they get a modified uniform. They're not going to get they're not going to get a varsity level type uniform. They're going to get a uniform that's going to be good for probably 2 to 3 years. And then you move on and you just keep going like that. But you have to have a plan. I think my plan goes out to like 2028.
Great.
Right now.
I appreciate it. I've got plenty more, but I see John's hand is up and Leah's.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah, I think Leah was first.
Thank you very much, Chris. This was fantastic and very well rounded. It was good to hear about all the different sports. I just wanted to speak for a second as a parent who's had kids play in many of these sports, but thankfully not swimming or field hockey. No offense to those stadiums where I, as a parent, did not want to sit. But I have a former volleyball player, and I know we were just having a conversation about roster sizes, and only 6 girls are out on the court at a time. And so if you carry a really big squad, a lot of those people are never going to see playing time. And I'm very appreciative of what you said, Christian, about making sure that people have that expectation going in.
Yes.
That if the parents and the students all know that, you know, we're going to carry a certain number of kids on the team, but X number may or may not get any playing time. They'll be able to practice and maybe they'll get into a game. I think those expectations just need to be very clear, because the student may then decide you know what, I'm not going to go out for volleyball this year. I'm going to run cross
Right.
country or do something else instead.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that. That's a,
Yep.
a good point.
Thank you. Yeah, and in our coaches meeting this year, that was one of the things that we talked about.
John?
You got muted.
John, you're on mute.
Muted myself. I just want to say, you know, both my kids played high school sports, and the difference between then and now, which is not that many years, is astonishing. Just the number of sports, the amount of participation, and the sophistication of our playing fields and all those things we offer is just, it's kind of mind bending. So, you know, there's been a lot of build up to this, but I think you're taking it to another level, and I really appreciate that. I just want to make that point.
Thank you.
Michael?
I wanted to ask about spectator limitations and how those decisions are made.
So working with Dr. Laurel and like Miss Sabia, for example, in the middle school, because it went hand in hand when they were setting up the gym for the winter concerts. So one of the things that we figured out, you know, we were going to go, like, we started off with a possible 2 spectators per athlete. Then we basically just looked at the spots in the gym that we could have a safe distance. And I think we're at like 133 for the gym. So our process basically for a home game in the gym, in the middle school gym, is 133 people. And once we reach that threshold, then we won't allow anyone else in. And that information has been shared with all of our competitors and other school districts that will be coming to our district. And the one nice thing is the section actually put together a Google Doc and shared it with everyone. So everyone's protocol is there. So like the other day, we were going to Eastchester, and I can real quickly get that information, and I sent it through final forms to all of the parents for that specific sport.
How do our protocols compare to?
We're probably in the middle. We're probably in the middle. There's some districts that have nothing, you know, no limitations. There's some districts that aren't allowing anyone in, and we're probably in the middle.
But Christian, we haven't turned anybody away. I asked that.
No, we haven't turned anyone away.
That's important. Even though we have this in place and we're satisfied with the way it's operating, no one is really being turned away.
And we're holding it for safety too. Like, for example, that we made a decision that you know, working with Dr. Laurel again and Lynn, we made a decision that I'm not allowing anyone from a spectator standpoint to come into the gym until 15 minutes prior to the game. So if it's a 5 o'clock start, you have to be out. We're not letting you in until 4:45. And I haven't really had any issues with parents or even visitors from the other schools. Everybody kind of understands, you know, because everybody is kind of going through this. And then once we open the doors, they come in. Like we had our tournament over the break. People came in, they exited the gym. We cleared the gym out after every game. No issues.
And is it the health department or the education department or the athletic association, or who's making the rules that?
So the state basically gave guidance to the schools, to you guys. It's up to you guys. So we basically have coming up with our own protocols.
So what we did was we used the 6-foot rule for
Yes.
adults. And then we actually looked at if it was students, they really could be 3. But again, if they're mixed with a family member, we have to go with the 6. And that's how we came up with the larger number.
Yeah. Because at first the number, I believe, was like 80. Yeah, it was like
80 something. Right.
80 something. Yeah.
We knew that wasn't going to be enough.
Right. Yeah.
And we came rather creative about it.
Yeah.
I made them go in and put tape down and measure 6 feet.
Yeah.
Came up with the numbers.
And yeah, Miss Sabia, and they actually had the gym marked out.
But other districts, you're saying, don't really have any.
So there's some districts that they don't have any rules. I know there was a tournament, and I don't want to call anybody out, but there was a tournament, and the place was packed to the roof. So
probably not now. Now's not the time to.
Right now, yeah.
But I guess it's something. Sounds like there's a lot of flexibility.
Yeah.
If we want to rethink it down the line.
Yeah, you can be more restrictive based because the state really didn't give any clear mandates to the districts.
So what I'm hearing you say though, Christian and Dr. Laura, is that what the adjustment has been working, and it's trying to adhere to the reopening plans from the state, which are that a teacher would have to be 6 feet from a student, but students can be 3 feet apart from one another. Trying to use some guideline that's been given to us.
No locker rooms. So I had a little pushback from the officials because they want their own locker room and all that, so we found a room for them that they can go in, and we notify the other schools. The students come to us already ready to play. We do offer a restroom. So, we're following kind of protocols that pretty much everyone is similarly following.
And what compounded it was because of the gym being used also for musical programs. So we were trying to find a happy medium that would work with both, sports and with music, using the same venue. So we wanted to be consistent in the application rule, not allowing more in one place and less in another. And it's worked well.
Yeah.
I believe from my last conversations with both Mark and with Lynn, they have not turned anyone away from any of the musical programs either.
Yeah, and we haven't either.
The other comment that I wanted to pick up on is this notion of inclusivity. I mean, I do have heartache for students who get cut from sports they've played all along at some point in high school. Sometimes that's just what happens, along the way as you say, funnel up through the system. But there, if we do add another program here or there, while we are a small town, those programs do add other opportunities. We have to field the team, and I also have seen with my own kids that we have a running program each season, and so those teams are bigger in size. As you said, the inner winter track is 2 busfuls, and I think part of that is because it's an easy sport for students to try out. It's like a safe one that it's an important skill in life, and it's also students an opportunity to train in the off season or in between their sports. So we do have, what we currently have, I do think provides students with a lot of opportunities to participate in sports beyond modified, which is obviously meant to be broad and give students exposure to new sports. But, we don't want to overexpand because we are a relatively small town, and we see that with our youth programs, how everybody's poaching from one another, and that dilutes, the number of students and the quality of the program. But a small expansion, or students looking at sports they might not have tried, but there might be opportunity for them. There's a spot for everybody, I think, if they want to try something out.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Chris, thanks so much for your time on this.
No, thank you.
I don't want
Thank you. I appreciate
speak
it.
for everybody else, but maybe it would be great to get a recap at the end of the year if it's not too much to put on your plate, or a couple of times throughout the year where we can get a check-in, because a lot of good news to share. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. Thanks again. I want to thank everyone too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay. This brings us to item 3.3, which is Board of Education committee reports. Leah, you had told me that there was a safety committee meeting to report on.
Yes, thank you so much, Jess. So Jim led a fantastic safety committee meeting on December 7th. We had parents, we had somebody from the Pelham Fire Department, somebody from the Pelham Manor Police Department, 2 members from Alteris, and administrators present at the meeting. And We focused a lot on evacuation drills, which was very relevant at the time, and talked about all of the training that is involved in those drills. And Alteris is reviewing the building emergency plans currently with all of the administrators to make sure that they're all up to speed, and to make sure that the emergency response teams all understand their roles. We also went over go bags, which we had a little presentation of what goes into those go bags that are in the classrooms for the teachers in the event that they need them. And we talked about the role of law enforcement in the drills that we have in our schools, and just had a general conversation about student mental health and wellness as it relates to safety. Jim, did you have anything to add?
Thank you. No, I agree. That was a very good meeting for everyone to get together and have an open dialogue and conversation about our plans for the year, our updates of where we are with our lockdown drills, evacuation drills, bringing Altiris into the mix as far as the training, and trying to raise our profile district-wide, which is very important. And the work you're doing as far as working and sitting down first with all of our district-wide administrators, not just our building administrators, but all of our administrators district-wide, and then at the same time working with the principals to develop building emergency response teams to then bring that down to the building level.
Michael?
Has Alteris, I don't know, provided any more formal kind of feedback about the high school incident after October, or did they talk about that at the meeting?
We didn't speak specifically about the October incident. I mean, we did have some broad discussion about really what's happening and what they're seeing, what we're seeing everywhere. Altiris works throughout Westchester, Long Island, and strongly regional, and even throughout the country, and what they're seeing, throughout all the districts. And it's really not, what we're seeing is not unusual, unfortunately, with what they're seeing in other districts as well. But that brings us back to making sure we're comfortable with our safety plans, and our emergency response teams, and working throughout our with our buildings. And again, just I think it's trying to provide more tools for our toolbox, right, and helping our administrators and the people in our buildings have those tools.
I think it was very telling that the law enforcement were there at 8 o'clock in the morning on a weekday, were very participatory and stayed for the whole meeting and had lots of input. And that, they've been able to use Hutchinson to practice their drills. And they really seem to have a great interest in getting to know students, being comfortable in the buildings. And I think that, to me, as a parent, is very comforting.
Thank you. I think that raises a great point, and a great time to remind folks, just as far as police officers' regular tour every day, what they do is they have a familiarization of our building, and they have access to all our buildings, and they can access those buildings during the day, and they do that so that our students are aware that our officers are not always there when bad things happen. They're comfortable seeing officers there. It creates that familiarization. And also our officers are then certainly, they know where things are in our buildings, and they identify people and faces and those types of things too. So I think it's a positive experience all the way around.
Thank you. John?
Do we have a liaison officer at the high school now?
We don't have a school resource officer. specifically identified. I know Lee Village of Pelham does have a DARE officer that works with the elementary students, and certainly Mr. Berkowitz and the high school staff, they know who to contact when they need to contact them at the police department.
Yeah, and I believe that because some of our middle school students in 6th and 7th grade missed out on DARE due to COVID, that Ms. Sabia is working with some of the police officers to and some high school students to provide a program for some middle school students. So so that's another thing that's happening with our local law enforcement.
Thank you. Do we have any other committee reports that I might have missed?
Jess, we have policy, but we'll do that when we do the policies.
Right. That was right before our break. Okay, so this brings us to 3.4, which is Assistant Superintendent's update on authentic learning.
Sure. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. Just a few notes, because I know this has been a long meeting already, but one important, I guess, foreshadowing that we should have knew that COVID would be reintroduced to our lives in such a strenuous manner is that back on December 21st, the New York State Education Department canceled the January Regents exams. So we were kind of surprised, but in hindsight, obviously, I think it was probably a good idea. And then any student who is caught up where they need that, they're currently enrolled in the class where they need that test for graduation, they'll be exempt from that requirement. So it's kind of similar to what's happened over the past couple of years with the Regents exams. And then we'll really have to kind of keep an eye on what's going to happen in June. We can only imagine if they start canceling those exams again. But that did kind of catch us off guard because we were kind of in regular instruction for most, if not all, of the fall and winter semester. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that one. And just some points on personnel. We've had some leadership, fluctuations over the past month. I just want to highlight, obviously, a couple people. John Thomas, who is serving as our acting assistant principal in the high school. And if you haven't met him already, he was a former colleague of mine from Valhalla. He was a high school principal. I was the middle school principal. I think that definitely in such a short amount of time, there's been a really change for the positive in the environment at the high school. He really works well with children. He's observing classes with teachers, classroom observations. I think he's been a great resource for Mark Berkowitz as well. So I'm just happy to say that John's been very successful serving in that role, in that capacity. I think that's really been great for the secondary campus. And also I want to thank, she's not here anymore, but Rosemary Matthews for filling in for Julia over the past month. It was great to kind of have her back, and she kind of kept the ship steady over that time. And I'm more than thrilled that Julia is back with us with her wonderful smile. And I know she's looking forward to becoming back the instructional leader of the PPS world and not just involved with COVID. So we hope that happens sooner than later. A few acknowledgements. The past few weeks have been pretty eventful, especially the past few days. John Sabalos and his team for really establishing a good logistical plan right before the break to get all those Chromebooks at the elementary level back in the hands of kids. So really, we need to thank John and his group because I think it was the Monday or Tuesday of the 21st or 20th. I don't remember. And I said, John, I think we better get these Chromebooks back in the hands of the kids to anticipate what could possibly happen or what may not happen. So I want to thank him again. And of course, the teachers and the administrators for the great flexibility, especially in this wacky time. Many of them have actually had COVID issues with their own families, and they're still ongoing, and they're no different than anyone else. And I know Dennis can attest to this. Our number one goal is to keep these schools open. Mm-hmm. No one wants to go back to that remote learning extended time, and we're very conscious of that. So we really, want to thank the teachers for helping their colleagues, but also getting ready and getting prepared for the continuity of instruction. And of course, I can't say anything more about Dennis and working with Dennis over the past few weeks, and I can look forward to that, continued relationship. I just want to thank him personally for that.
Thank you. Pleasure.
That's it.
So happy to call upon Julia Chung. I did enjoy having Rosemary back. That was a treat, but it's wonderful. I'd agree to see you smiling and know that your expertise is back, that we have all hands on deck with Julia Chung.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Steve. I wanted to give some thanks as well, but I won't repeat the thanks that you gave. I did want to add one more person I wanted to thank. That's Bridget Gates. Bridget, last summer when we posted this position, we really were in a place where we did not think that COVID would be where it is now. And so we did open up the position as a part-time job. And, that was, she came on board with that, thinking that she might be working maybe 20, maybe 30 hours a week. And it quickly turned into a full-time job and then some, with evenings and weekends. And I know it was a lot for her, but she stuck it out until end of December. And I just want to say that she's just been so wonderful. And she was a great addition. And she was just so helpful, I think, with the community, with the parents, with our nurses, with our administrators. I just want to thank her for everything that she did for us for the past 4 months. And I'm very excited to have the new person, Jackie, who is an RN that we hired. And we didn't make that mistake this time. And we did hire a full-time person. So hopefully we'll be able to have her kind of take over real soon. And like Steve said, I'm hoping to do more of the PPS world and less of COVID, hopefully in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Jim, the Assistant Superintendent's update on finance and facilities.
Hi, thank you. Good evening and Happy New Year. And of course, Julia, welcome back. And in some ways, it seems like you never left, because I know probably once a week we had a conversation about something, or we were texting about something at work. So at the same time, I hope you were able to get that opportunity, that downtime that was needed. It was an interesting morning. As Dr. Lauro mentioned, we had a 5 o'clock in the morning text exchange where nothing was happening. And later on in the morning, we started taking calls from our groundspeople and our custodians who we brought in early. And they were very good in providing that feedback to us and the urgency with which it had to be done. And I think it was great as far as what we were able to do with that change in the traffic or in the weather conditions as they happen so quickly. And Dr. Lauro, we're looking forward to our conversation Friday morning at 5 a.m. We'll repeat as needed. So it was an interesting morning for sure. Last week was interesting. We had quite a bit of work happening district-wide as far as the capital work. I shared some of this with the board at Hutchinson School. We had a lot of work going on, our punch list work that was happening, some tiles that needed to be installed that were hit. We had some shortages earlier on when we opened the school year, some things that were damaged that needed to be replaced. Our sound panels are being installed. The building is really beautiful. Carrie Ann Walsh was there balancing the building, trying to get the heat right. As we said, it's probably going to take a good year to get these things ironed out or more, but they were there. And, I walked into one room, it was 90 degrees. And I was there yesterday and it wasn't 90 degrees. So that was a positive sign that some work was getting done there. Outside the building, Suez was installing another fire hydrant outside in front of the building. It's one of these new funny looking ones. We call them minions. That's what they look like to us for parents of small children. They're funny looking devices, but it's great. Suez and the village requested and Suez put that in. Maybe we never need it, but it's always nice to have that there. So that was some work happening in front of the building. And then behind the building, we're talking about the demolition. As I shared with the board, the modulars have been demolished. There's a big pile of scrap behind the building, behind the fence that happened relatively quickly. So quickly that our construction manager lost a refrigerator in the demolition. He went to visit Prospect Hill. When he came back, his refrigerator and the modular was gone. But that's happened nicely. The window, the metal from those windows in the school have been taken down. And right now, Capital, our demolition contractor, and Casal, our site work contractor, are working on the best way to logistically take the building down, work the access road, and make sure we protect our environmentally sensitive areas and the site that are still there, the trees, and we don't want to cause any additional damage. So we met with the architect and the construction manager today, and that's really what they're going to be working on. And hopefully they want to get to taking that building down pretty quickly, but they've got to build that access road in the back. So they're working on that very, very diligently. At the high school and middle school, we had some waterproofing work at the middle school this summer and some additional scope that was brought into it. That work has been completed. On the front of the high school, it's nice to say that the waterproofing work has been completed. The steel remediation work has been completed. We're really moving on to that next phase for the window replacement and the precast stones. And this is very, very good news for us. So the architect has asked for some samples of those precast stones so we can share them with the board members that are on the bond steering committee. Once we have those pieces, we'll bring those board members together to take a look at it, make sure we get a final recommendation and green light. And at the same time, we can prep those window openings for the new windows. And if the timeline holds, we could see that finishing up in the April timeframe. So that's very exciting. It's getting tiring looking at the scaffolding in front of the building. I don't think any of us like looking at it, but we also know good work sometimes takes time, and let's call it that. Inside the school, we're still finishing work on the art rooms that were constructed. The counters and the sinks were installed within the last week. We've also been working with the contractors on the time frame for the next phase once we move out of the administrative offices. And then I know at the last board meeting there was a public comment about the new art rooms and the functionality of them. And that's some of the things that we've been working with the art teachers and the architect with since the beginning of the year. We've also looked at the next phase of that construction, where we're providing 6 new classrooms in the high school as a result of all of this construction. And one of our thoughts is what we could do to perhaps provide additional space for that art program. So we spoke to the architect who offered to come up with a sketch of what we could do to one of those spaces, kind of the area currently occupied where Dr. Champ and Dr. Lauro are, and to see how that space could be configured if we were to use it functionally as an art space or additional space for that program. Again, while still providing those classrooms promised as part of the project. So once we receive that from the architect, again, we'll share that with the board, and we'll take a look at it and see. And if that's something we want to move forward with, we can certainly get those items priced from our contractor.
Just to make a comment, Jim,
Yes.
John may remember that, and no one else probably, well, somebody might remember as their children might have been through, but that was the original art room that we're in, that the offices are in. Those were all art, those were the 2 art rooms and storage areas. And then, of course, in the conversion of what we did, it's now about 20 years later, it's going back to an art room.
And the architect actually sent me plans from 1957. They were math rooms back then.
That's what you had said that.
It's funny how things change. At Prospect Hill, we're moving along nicely. If you've had an opportunity to go by the building, you can see much of the brickwork is up. And we spent a lot of time with members of the bond steering committee looking at the mix of brick, of light brick and dark brick, and trying to, getting an exact match to that building really is wasn't possible. But I think what you'll see when you look at the building, and it's pretty obvious when I see it, is it's a nice looking building, and I think it's very pleasing to the eye when you look at that new addition and how it blends with the existing building. And some of that precast stone, which is a little bit of, well, it is a yellow color on the existing building. the new precast stone has that same tint to kind of match the existing. So they're moving along again nicely on that building. The mechanical contractors were there last week and are there. The plumbing contractors were there and are there. We had to break through from the outside of the addition into the existing school. That was done last week. We've boxed off those areas inside of the building. And the exterior windows for the addition should be coming shortly, and they'll be going in. So that'll be nice too, because it'll make the building not cold, because we still have you get some of those elements. So we're turning up the heat a little bit more, making sure it's a pleasant environment. And again, that's moving along at a nice pace. And then
Jim, just a question: the status of the roofing there?
Thank you. That's a great question. We spoke to the architect and to the builder about that. They have requested samples of the slate, and again, the slate to match the existing roof, the colors, and the sizes. So when they receive that, they're going to put a mock-up together for us, same as we did with the brick for the board members that are on the bond steering committee, to come and look at those samples before moving forward. And again, it's a slate roof on this to match the existing.
When we might see that?
They said that they've ordered the slate, so it's just a matter of it coming in right now. If you look at the building, you'll see they've got the metal decking went up with the plywood over that, and I think they have a waterproof plastic or rubber membrane over that now too. So it's fairly imminent from the timeline of where they are with the construction. And then the administrative offices for the move at the Sanborn building have been moving along. We're waiting on the certificate of occupancy for the final inspection there. And once we do that, we'll make sure we light up our technology. So we have our fiber up there. We have to light up the technology, the telephones, the alarms, access controls, all of those items, signage. And then we'll put together a moving plan for moving the administrative offices over there in a phased approach. I think right now our discussion is to look at the PPS group first, which currently occupies the former business office area, and then move them over first. That would also free up that space for the contractors to begin some of the work on that side of the building, which was planned. And the nice part about that too is there's a direct exterior door to that space when the contractors are working on that space. So quite a bit happening, which is really great, and it's moving along, and hopefully we'll see the building start coming down to it at Hutchinson. Otherwise, this evening we have some transfers being requested. One of the items on that you'll see. We are requesting to move some existing salary dollars over from custodial line to overtime, really due to some personnel that were out and some vacancies that we've experienced this year. We had a couple people out with injury. We had some vacancies that happened over the summer, excuse me. And then, of course, some additional costs for cleaning and sanitizing related to COVID. So it's not something that's coming out of a contingent line. We'd had with those vacancies, we're able to transfer those dollars over. But I wanted to give you kind of an explanation for that, just because it is a sizable number, and that's the number that we want to make sure that will get us through the rest of the year. And we're still faced with one vacancy in that department. Let's see where else. Then we got a couple of appointments for personnel. Again, we're recommending the hiring of a safety monitor, which is really great. We unfortunately lost someone about a month ago. So this is an opportunity to bring someone in for safety monitor, a person who is very familiar, grew up in town, a retired Pelham police officer. And we appreciate having that police officer training. But as we tell them, we want to make sure we have a safe and friendly environment for our students and staff and visitors. We like the thinking and the training of our former police officers, and we've had a pretty good success in the past. So we're excited to recommend that appointment so that he can fill that vacancy that's been there, and we hope to bring them in as early as tomorrow with the board's approval. And then lastly, I mean, simple things. We're just increasing the reimbursement for IRS for mileage. It went up 2.5 cents per mile. So that's something that we address every year. And then to talk a little bit about what Dr. Lauro mentioned earlier, this meeting about the new substitute rates. Kind of looking back.
Jim,
You muted yourself by accident, Jim.
I don't think I could have done that if I tried. Excuse me.
It's like your piece of paper did that for you or something.
Well, looking back at our substitute, and what Dr. Lauro spoke about, our substitute rates and our substitute spending. So we look back to 16-17, going about a 5-year look back. We found that we were about 75-25 with covering with our dollars spent on substitute teachers versus our teachers covering on a per period basis. It's closer to a 50-50 mix right now, going back the last year. And I think some of that is really related to our loss of our ability to get substitutes. And with that, of course, it's more expensive to cover a teacher with a teacher covering for every period during a day than it is having a substitute teacher covering for the day. So, in raising these rates, we're still going on a daily rate. We'll still spend less than what we would if we had a teacher cover each of those periods. We're just not saving as much, but hopefully this is a way to incentivize folks to come in and spend some time in Pelham, and we can get those coverage that we needed. As Dr. Lauro mentioned too, to really not burn out our teachers too, because they need that time to plan and do their regular job.
Leah?
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this up again, Jim and Dr. Lowe. I know this is something that we've talked about over the years many, many times, which is how competitive our substitute rates are with other districts and whether that impacts our ability to attract substitutes. So I guess we'll see now if this helps us to get a larger pool. And I'm sure that our teachers and our parents and everyone in the community will be very grateful if we're able to do that. So thank you for taking this step.
Thank you. And that's what I've got for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we're going to move to section 5 because there was one public comment and it wasn't about the agenda. So I'd like to take a consent of item 5.1 and 5.2. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, John. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Benny. So this is regarding the budget transfer that Jim mentioned and the authorized mileage reimbursement date. Does anybody have any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 5.3 I'll take by itself. It's a motion to accept a donation. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ian. I was going to say, no, don't fall asleep on me, guys. Do I have a second? Thank you, Stu. So this is a donation of $5,000 for grant 2204 for jazz artists in residence at the Pelham Middle School and Pelham Memorial High School for their jazz bands. And that gratitude be bestowed upon its donor, the Pelham Education Foundation, which is just, I feel like we've seen this in years past. It's a great opportunity for our musicians. And then another donation for $9,000 to the Amy Geisinger Scholarship Fund, and that gratitude be bestowed upon its donor, Frederick W. Geisinger. So that's wonderful as well. So thank you. Do you guys have any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay. So this brings us to section 6. We had a small financial section, a little bit bigger policy section. I'll take 6.1 first. It's a motion to readopt the code of conduct for the 2021-2022 school year. Leah, do you want to touch on this or no?
Sure. So this was really just an oversight. We had the code of conduct on in our July meeting, we annually have to review it, which we did. And then we would have ordinarily voted on it in August, and somehow it just slipped off the agenda. So when I was doing some research, looking at the code of conduct in the context of some other things we're doing in the policy meeting, I noticed that it hadn't been updated on the website, and doing some investigating, figured out that it had just been an oversight and we hadn't actually voted on it. So no changes have been made to it. We just need to approve it.
Very good. So I realized I didn't take the motion. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, John. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Stu. So are there any questions or comments? So we did the public hearing this summer. There were no changes at that time. And we would normally follow it up with just a formal vote after the hearing period, correct? That it sits out in the community for a certain number of days.
Yeah, it should have been on the August agenda, so it just got inadvertently left off.
Okay. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Thank you for seeing that, Leah. I know that code of conduct is on our plate with our policy committee, a beast that it is. So I'm glad that we've finalized this little detail. Okay. Item 6.2 is a motion to retire a policy, which we don't do often. It's policy 7550, complaints and grievances by students. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Sue. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vinny. So Leah, can you explain a little bit about this?
Sure. So there are 3 policies on the agenda tonight that are all related. This one and Dignity for All Students, and 7552, which is a policy that deals with bullying. And so we received an update to Dignity for All Students from our policy service, and advice from them that this policy 7550, complaints and grievances by students, is now covered by DASA. And that so it's now redundant and we don't need it. So we're just asking you if it is okay for us to retire this, because the provisions that are in this policy now, which we'll talk about in more detail when we go over that one.
Any questions or comments?
Should it be retired after we approve that? DASA will make it redundant, but so should we retire it after we finalize the DASA policy?
Well, we have an existing DASA policy. This one that's on the agenda is just,
Updating
a
it.
little bit more updated. Yeah. So we have an existing DASA policy in our policy manual. Anyway.
Right. So, right. I don't know, Leah. Does it matter to you?
I mean, I don't think it really matters. If you're more comfortable waiting until we finally approve DASA, that's fine. We can hold off on it. We're just doing a first reading of DASA tonight, but as Pauline said, we always have a DASA policy on the books. So
yeah, I mean, is there anything that a student would lose out on the ability to file a complaint now if this policy were to be removed? Like, is there any exposure at all?
I don't, okay. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't really speak to that completely, but I don't think so, but sorry?
Thought you were a lawyer.
I'm not a practicing lawyer, and I certainly wouldn't give advice in that
on
regard,
school law
in a legal way. So all I can say is what I said before. If you're more comfortable waiting, that's fine. We were just advised that, and as I said, that it's redundant because the complaint process is covered by DASA. And DASA, the changes that are being made are mostly to reinforce the training provisions of DASA, make sure that it aligns with the Title IX policies and the other harassment policies. And the update makes it more clear and consistent. So I don't know that it makes a difference, but like I said, if you're more comfortable, we can just hold off on that until we approve DASA. It doesn't matter to me.
How do others feel about this?
I'm indifferent.
I remember this recommendation coming from our legal counselor, right? From our policy service. And then legal counsel that we could retire this policy. I'm okay either way. I mean, Ian, do you feel strongly one way or another about it?
No. It was really a question more than.
It's a good point that you raised. Okay, so do we have any other questions or comments about retiring this policy? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, 6.3 is the first reading of policy 7554, which is the Dignity for All Students Act, the DASA Act.
Okay, so what you have online is basically the sample policy, Dignity for All Students policy that we received from the policy service. This is a required policy. As Pauline said, we have DASA on the books, and our administrators are very familiar with using it. We've had several conversations at the policy committee about how to implement the DASA policy. And this update, as I said, is mostly to ensure consistency with other harassment policies that we're also working on. It ensures wide access to the Dignity Act coordinator information so that people are aware of how to contact the Dignity Act coordinator. And it ensures that all employees, not just teachers, receive annual training. And like I said, that it coordinates with federal civil rights law and other policies that touch on harassment. So
does anybody have any questions or comments in this first reading? This is one that we will definitely see through a few readings because it's big and it's important. And there are some changes.
Leah, can you just talk just practically of what's a new thing that can now be done that wouldn't be done before in the current, like just what's a practical application?
So I guess Steve and Julia could probably speak to that better. I think it seemed to me, and I'm not in the shoes of an administrator, that broadening the training seemed to be one of the significant things. Can either of you speak to that?
One piece of it is I know we train. It's an annual training that has to really happen with our teachers, right? And then the coordinators, of course, are trained as well. I think it's just making sure that that's in place so that the processes are followed. Julia, is there anything else?
I think it's also just making sure that, because there have been updates to the original regulations, so we want to make sure that it is up to date. I think what we've been trying to do with the DASA coordinators across the district has also been trying to be more consistent in terms of having the same forms and making sure that, we have the right information on the website and making sure the requirements of the updates to the regulation we are following. So I think it really is more about making sure that it's up to date, because I think with our policies, they're not, it does take us a few years to kind of, revisit it, to update it. So I think training is a big part of that.
There was also a lot of discussion at our policy meeting. I don't know if it's specific to these changes, but that each building has its DASA coordinator, but that, Julia, you're ultimately the point person for the district, correct? So it's sort of kind of streamlining that the community, as you said, the documents that are used in the process, but also the coordination of communications and who one should report to.
Yes, that's also correct.
Any other questions or comments for this first reading? Okay, so next is 6.4, which is policy 7552. It's bullying in schools, and it's a first reading.
Okay, so this is another policy, an existing policy that we have. And this policy was one that the service also told us we could retire if we chose to because it's covered by DASA. And when we spoke about it at the policy committee, our administrators felt very strongly that we retain this policy because they felt that it addresses cyberbullying more specifically than DASA, and that's something that's important to them. So we did run it by our lawyers, and the only change we really made was to update the reporting process so that it aligns more closely with the updated DASA. So that is why we have that before you tonight. So this is one that we don't need to have, but our administrators would appreciate it if we retained.
Is there a reason not to just incorporate, if cyberbullying is the specific interest, is there a reason not to just incorporate cyberbullying explicitly into DASA?
So cyberbullying is in DASA. I think being able to call out this policy specifically gives the administrators a little more another tool for them to use when they're handling cyberbullying. And they felt that I understand what you're saying, to take all this language and stick it into DASA. I think that they felt that to have the standalone policy was more useful to them. Steve or Julia, do you have anything to add to that?
I do not.
Michael, did you, just from being in the meetings, did you?
I just remember, I think Miss Sabia saying that she felt it wasn't a complete overlap, that some of the language was stronger or important to have in the separate bullying policy.
I think the other thing was that we wanted our DASA policy to be very consistent with the actual regulation, which doesn't necessarily call out cyberbullying to the extent that we want it to. And that's kind of what Michael is saying, I think, that cyberbullying is a huge part of what happens in schools. And so we wanted to emphasize that. And since we already have a policy that talks about it, we wanted to keep it to emphasize and add on additional parts to the cyberbullying, and not just the word cyberbullying, which is in DASA policy.
I also think this is where it helps at the bottom of these policies, where you see the other policies that sometimes the policies reference one another because there are overlaps. So there is a connectedness, but it seemed like this was kind of a broader, topic, I would say, and a better way to address cyberbullying in this context. Any other questions or comments? So again, this is the first reading. And then next is a first reading, 6.5 is the first reading of a new policy, payroll policy. Kick it to you and to Jim.
So, Jim, I'll start and then you can chime in if you have anything further. This was a policy that came to Jim, my understanding, through the internal auditors. It went through the audit committee without comment, and it seemed like a good idea to have this on the books. And that's really it. Jim?
Yeah, interesting enough, it's not one of the required policies, but certainly school districts, not all school districts, but it's recommended to have one. And we ran it past legal, and they just added some additional language in there as far as making sure that people who are getting paid are on the books and we're not paying independent contractors. All good practices, which we already do. But this is part of that, the work that we do with our internal auditor and that follow-up work with our corrective action plans.
And Jim, if this isn't required, is this one that we'll have to review every year, like some of your?
I don't believe so. No,
Okay.
those are specific ones that you just where you have to do that every year.
Legally do it each
Yeah,
year.
this is not one of those.
So if I understand it, the auditors want to have this so there's some policy that if anybody breaks the policy, we have recourse. Because this is what they do basically.
Right, and part of it is to make sure we've got some practices behind the policy, and with our transition in payroll now too, we've got a lot more documentation as far as how we run our payroll from payroll to payroll, with time collection and payments.
It's a very general policy. It doesn't
It
really
is.
say much.
It is broad.
Specifies the process a little bit.
That's why the audit committee had no problem with it.
Yeah.
And actually, this is the audit that most of this is what was provided by the internal auditor when I asked him for a sample policy.
Does the principal play any role in the approval of payroll for their campus?
They do for their hourly employees. They do sign those timesheets, or they'll approve it on the time and attendance system. And then they also will report substitutes, or if there are any coverages or any extra additional pays.
So should the principal be named in this policy as well then?
I think that's part of our procedures, where we receive those signed documents or approved documents from our principals or from our administrators, and with that, then we move forward with our payments. So it's
embedded. It's embedded. But if part of the reason to do this in the first place is to have some recourse if something goes awry, it might behoove you to include principals. But
Well, there's probably a lot of other people who have a handle in this too. So you kind of have all inclusive or not. That's why it's a very general policy. But if the auditors think it's important, I don't have an objection. The proliferation of policies is always a frustrating thing.
Partially why I asked if this is one we have to take a look at every year, because there's so many that come before us year over year, and others we don't quite get to. So, but this seems pretty benign. If it's been recommended to us, I'm okay with having it.
Yeah, especially if the audit committee doesn't have any issue with it and it's consistent with what they've heard from the auditors. Seems to make sense.
And it's apparently based on a sample policy, so other districts, I am assuming, have it. I think the rule of thumb is if we feel that we need it, even though it's not required, then we can adopt it. We wouldn't just adopt it, have it.
Okay.
Everybody comfortable moving on to the next section?
Yep.
Okay. Next is superintendent's personnel recommendations. I'd like to take a consent of 7.1 and 7.2. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Vinny. A second.
Second.
I thought it was the same person. That's how late it's getting. John. Okay, so this gives us some flexibility for Dr. Champ's return and Dr. Laura's exit to give them the opportunity to perhaps overlap as needed a few days, in the same way that we tried to accomplish that when Dr. Laura joined us before Dr. Champ left. And also a little bit of flexibility should her husband's recovery take a little bit longer. Her plan is to come back on the Tuesday before we meet next, but we won't be meeting until Wednesday the 18th. So we just want to be positioned for anything and not have to hold a special meeting if we were to have to make any adjustments to her return. So it just provides some flexibility between the date she had planned to come back and February 1st. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I have one comment. I think it would be fantastic if Dr. Laura and Dr. Champ had a couple days of overlap. That would be very helpful. So thank you, Dr. Laura, for agreeing to do that.
I'm glad this came up for that reason in a practical fashion, because it's so often in conversations that Dr. Laura and I've had over the last 5 weeks, we've talked about, it would be hard just to exit and have her jump right back in, because so much happens in schools and so much has happened in this 5-week segment of time. So it'd be great for them to overlap some for that reason alone.
And
So I agree.
baton.
Pass the baton, yeah. Run some of the lap together. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, now I'll take a consent of, we talked pretty heavily about the substitute teacher. I'll take a consent of 7.3 to 7.6. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you, Sue and Leah. So any other additions? I know we've talked about each of these items quite a bit, but anything else to add about the substitute teacher plan that we have in place, which I'm excited to see. I hope it'll yield more subs. Anything else? Some leave replacements, subs,
I think
More subs.
more subs, which is good.
I think that's important for the community to know that we're trying to get more substitutes, and there's been people, saying that they'd be willing to volunteer. So we're even paying more.
Yeah. What I was saying the other day when Dr. Laura first shared that he was going to present this with us is, I think it's also nice in this notion that you could commit to like 15 days at a time, because sometimes you might want to get somebody who's retired and they don't really know what they're committing to. They don't know if they're going to be called. So to know that you're committing to a set time is tangible to them and something that people may commit to.
So it should be, people should understand that all new substitutes have to go through the same background check and
fingerprinting and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing changes with that. No.
Yeah, maybe people, the community who are thinking about volunteering, they should understand that.
And also, we encourage them to. I apologize, Jessica, for cutting you off.
No, go ahead. I'm just reading something that we're approving here that goes along with that. Keep going, and I'll.
Yeah, it's just to ensure that any candidates apply through OLAS, right? And then we look at the candidates. Then we bring them resumes into to different principals to interview the candidates, and we have a whole process to make sure that they meet our needs, right? We just, even though we want to broaden the pool too, we want to make sure we attract people. We want to make sure that they're the right people to work with our kids in any position. But also, we should just be aware that I think we're very competitive now with other school districts in terms of obtaining substitute teachers. But it's still going to be let's be real with it. Is that the reality is that it's still going to be a struggle to get more people.
I'll just say this: we probably will pull out the front of the pack. I don't know if anybody else doing this, and I may have a bunch of other superintendents angry at me, but
let them be angry.
No, it doesn't matter. It's okay. They do. I mean, do it to us, so let me just give it back a little bit.
It's clear that there's a little bit of a paradigm shift, and we're going to need to be having a whole bigger stable of teachers that we can rely on. And to be able to ensure the quality and the availability of those people is going to be critical. So I think this is a great step.
The only thing I was going to add is, even when in this public content that you see, where the list of people who we approve, it says pending successful fingerprint clearance. So we're approving these names, but they still have to officially go through the process. And as I'm looking down the list, I'm also seeing two of my favorite youngsters in our community are going to be our observers for the rest of the school year. So that's really cool and kind of making me feel old at the same time. So. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Section 8 is People Personnel Services. I'd like to take a consent of 8.1 and 8.2. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I was going to say, don't hold out on me. John, a second?
Second.
Thank you, Leah. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Section 9 is new business. Okay. Section 10 is communications and comments from the public. And I have one. I'm just trying to find it in my inbox. It's earlier in that. Oh, okay. It was just a clarification on an email request. So this is from Joanne Kalan from 2 Circle Hill Road. And I know we addressed this in Dr. Laura's opening remarks, but I'm going to still read it. How is asynchronous virtual instructional day defined by our district? Because with today being an asynchronous virtual instructional day due to inclement weather, why was it not treated like a snow day? And as a result of today, are we planning or can we plan to have an additional day of in-person instruction added to the school year as long as it's safe to do so, preferably reducing winter break 1 day? So given Dr. Laura, I would just say that we don't have everybody attending our meetings, perhaps, and I'm saying this with Alex on, we can make sure that we're clarifying this as we solidify our program in our future communications, particularly given that we might have a snow day in front of us this week. So, okay. So Leah, do you have a motion?
Madam President, would you entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
You guys want to stay on all night? Thank you, Michael. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Thank you, everybody. This was a great meeting.
Yes.
Good night.
All right, thank you.
Very
Good night.
inspiring.